Chapter 676, Destroy Qi, Destroy Song, Invincible in the World. 1. When they heard that Li Yueming was going to mobilize the soldiers of North Glacier Town in Hujing to attack the northeast of Deqi and the southeast of Great Song, they were shocked. Including Ding Yi, Huang Li Er, and the others, everyone's faces revealed an incredulous expression. It had only been a few years since the Star Moon dynasty was established. Even with the help of the Fire Sect, the Star Moon army had cleaned up the remaining forces of the Great Zhou dynasty very quickly. However, a few years was not enough to completely eliminate the ruling power of the Great Zhou dynasty. Although the number of soldiers in the Star Moon troop had increased by several million compared to 3 years ago, the territory controlled by the Star Moon troop had also expanded by several times. Whether it was soldiers or talents, they were not what they had been when they ruled the Northwest. In summary, the Star Moon Empire itself was still unstable. It was already very good to be able to protect their territory from being disturbed. Under such circumstances, how could they take the initiative to attack other dynasties? If this order was given by any other high-ranking officer of the Star Moon army, it would probably cause a huge uproar. There would be many voices of doubt and dissuasion from the internal department. Only Li Yueming said it himself, so it didn't cause chaos and doubt. After all, Li Yueming was a well-deserved god within the Star Moon army. He was the faith of all the members of the Star Moon army. Even so, hearing such an order was still hard for many to accept. It was not easy for him to recover from Li Yueming's instructions. As the current commander of the Star Moon army, Ding Yi was the first to step forward and ask a key question. Great General Li, is the objective of this battle to deplete the enemy's main force or to annihilate the enemy? Hearing Ding Yi's question, the other Star Moon troop higher UPS couldn't help but secretly give him a thumbs up. Great General Li had personally given the order. Currently, only Ding Yi and a few other people were able to raise questions in person. The others were either not experienced enough or of a low level. And Commander Ding Yi's question was just right. It not only highlighted Great General Li's unquestionable legal principles, but also cleverly understood Great General Li's true thoughts. Li Yueming looked around and found that only a few of the Star Moon army high-ranking officials in the entire northern Ice River town dared to look at him. He knew that the Star Moon army he was familiar with in the past had already left the northern Ice River town. Now, what was left behind was a colossus called the Star Moon Empire. However, he did not say anything. The history of mankind was a circle that could not be bypassed, and the hegemony of dynasties always repeated the process of walking from one end of the circle to the other. Li Yueming founded North Glacier Town, wanting to do his best to break this historical law, but the facts now proved that he had only jumped from one circle to another. After thinking for a while, Li Yueming said word by word, "Of course it's a war to destroy a country. Don't worry, everything will go smoothly." Hearing this, Ding Yi nodded and did not continue asking. In fact, he didn't mean to be afraid of Li Yueming. The reason why he asked was just his usual style of doing things. Countless lessons from the past had proven that Li Yueming's long-term vision was absolutely correct. EV.C. Therefore, no matter how outrageous Li Yueming's order was, Ding Yi, Huang Li Er, and the other elders would never doubt it. They would only confirm if they had any misunderstanding of what Li Yueming wanted to express. However, he knew these things, but others might not know. Just like how other people always had ulterior motives. Northern Glacier Town moved very quickly. After Li Yueming returned and gave his orders, it only took half a month for the million-strong Star Moon troop to be reorganized. Like a swarm of locusts, they began to march toward the Great Qi and Great Song. Such a big move naturally could not hide from the eyes of the outside world. In the beginning, no one understood why the Star Moon army, which had just established a country and was still unstable, suddenly reorganized its troops. But as time passed, the Star Moon army's strategic goal became clearer. Only then did the outside world realize that the Star Moon army was actually preparing to send troops to Great Qi and Great Song. After repeatedly confirming that he was not hallucinating, it immediately caused a huge shock in the outside world. My God, is the Star Moon Army crazy? If I remember correctly, Northern Ice River Town changed its name to Star Moon Dynasty and took over the land of Great Zhou only a few years ago, right? At such an awkward time, it's fine if the Star Moon Empire doesn't take the opportunity to recuperate and digest the land and population they have seized. Instead, they actually took the initiative to send troops to provoke the Great Qi and Great Song. Wasn't it afraid of being attacked by all countries? The Star Moon Empire is originally in a good situation. As long as they calm down and settle down for a few decades, they will have the military strength to fear nothing. Now that he dared to mess around like this, did Mo Fei become arrogant because the battle was too smooth? Such an inconceivable order, I guess only Li Yueming has the ability to push it, right? What does Li Yueming want to do? Chapter 677, Destroy Qi, Destroy Song, Invincible in the World. 2. Seeing the Star Moon troop gathering such a large number of troops and splitting them into two groups to attack the Great Qi dynasty and Great Song dynasty at the same time, all the people of insight in the world were dumbfounded. They simply couldn't understand how the brains of the Star Moon troops' higher UPS worked. Logically speaking, it was impossible for a normal person to make such a brainless decision. But now, the truth was right in front of them. Putting aside the fact that the Star Moon Army's current top priority was to digest the population and territory in their stomachs. Even if Li Yueming had nothing better to do and wanted to attack a country, he shouldn't have split up and provoked two countries at the same time. Back then, it was still so difficult to fight one-on-one with the Great Zhou. Now that he was fighting on two fronts, did he think that he was not going to die fast enough? That's why. When they heard the news, no one in the outside world could understand. However, it didn't take long for them to see a phenomenon that made them even more unable to understand. Under normal circumstances, if the Star Moon Army was so arrogant and attacked two large countries at the same time without any concealment, the other 5 countries should have stood up and condemned them or even sent troops to stop the Star Moon Army. After all, when the 6 countries were fighting for hegemony, no country would watch as one of them suddenly became the strongest. The Star Moon Army's annexation of the Great Zhou was already enough for the other 5 countries to be on guard against a great enemy. Now, they even showed a stance of wanting to sweep through the 6 countries and unify the world. Uncle can tolerate it, but Auntie can't tolerate it. It was impossible for the countries to turn a blind eye to this and swallow their anger. However, this was the problem. This time, the Star Moon troop had caused such a huge commotion. The millions of soldiers were extremely arrogant. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, they split into 2 groups and attacked the 2 neighboring countries at the same time. The higher UPS of the other 5 countries were like roosters whose eggs had been crushed. They did not even fart. It was truly unbelievable. Crazy, this is crazy. This world is crazy, and I'm crazy too. Why don't the other 5 nations say anything? Is the Star Moon Army that terrifying? My youth is over. I suddenly feel that this world is so unfamiliar. The warlords are fighting for supremacy, and the 6 countries are fighting for hegemony. Is the chaotic era going to end in the hands of our generation? As countless people in the world muttered in disbelief. This war that concerned the fate of the entire 9 regions finally broke out without any accident. The first to attack was the main force of the Star Moon troop heading towards Dachi. Most of them were the garrison troops of the North Glacier Town headquarters, and they were the more elite troops of the Star Moon Army. Now that they were fighting, their combat strength was even more ferocious. In just a month, they had broken through 6 cities of the Great Qi and thrown the Great Qi into chaos. Many of Dachi high-ranking officials couldn't figure out how the Star Moon Army dared to do this. However, in the face of the increasingly fierce attacks, they had to accept the fact that the Star Moon Legion was not only waging war on 2 countries at the same time, but their preparations for war were also not as simple as just attacking cities and seizing land. They were really prepared to attack the capital and completely destroy Dachi. After confirming this point, the officials of Dechi finally abandoned their fantasies and prepared to fight. But at this moment, a shocking piece of news came. An old man with white hair and a beard suddenly appeared in the palace of Dechi. With just one hand, he directly smashed the entire palace into pieces. At that time, Qi Tianzi was in the palace discussing countermeasures with the ministers. When the disaster came, it was crushed by the collapsed rubble and bricks. By the time the guards dug through the ruins, there was only a pile of flesh left. This sudden blow stunned Dechi and the entire world. What the f*ck, what kind of situation was this? However, before they could discuss it, the same news came from the Great Song. The Star Moon Army attacked the Great Song, but still didn't get too big of a result. However, the battle report from the front line still frightened all the civil and military officials of the Great Song. Just as the Song Emperor was discussing with the ministers whether to prepare for the one-stop service of moving the capital, ceding territory, paying reparations, and seeking peace, a crazed middle-aged scholar suddenly appeared in the palace. With a wave of the scholar's hand, all the civil and military officials in the Great Song dynasty were sent flying, falling everywhere. The emperor of the Great Song was so scared that he wet his pants on the spot. The next day, he ordered the entire country to stop resisting and surrender to the Star Moon Army. The two events happened at almost the same time. The higher UPS in the country were instantly disintegrated. In a time of war, it was a sign of national subjugation for a dragon without a leader. In other words, didn't that mean that the war had already ended before it even started? How was this possible? The 6 nations had been passed down for so long, yet they didn't even have a single ancestor to guard the world? Impossible. Back then, wasn't the great Zhou Dragon Emperor Ji Tian a manifestation of the trump cards of the 6 dynasties? Why were they so easily defeated by the Star Moon Army? Everything happened so suddenly that everyone in the world who heard the news went blank. For a moment, he did not even know how to think. They had lived for so many years and had shallow knowledge. They simply could not imagine that something like destroying 2 countries in a day could happen in reality. Chapter 678, Destroy Qi, Destroy Song, Invincible in the World. 3. However, since the birth of the ancient ballad, no one has ever achieved this goal. As a result, there are always endless wars and endless pain in the 9 provinces. Now that the Star Moon troop has already destroyed the 3 kingdoms, the remaining 3 kingdoms will be destroyed in the blink of an eye. However, the members of the Star Moon troop who sacrificed their lives for the Star Moon troop did not seek to transcend this world, but to create an utopia where everyone has freedom and equality, clothes to wear, and food to eat. Now, I stand here to convey a message to all the people and soldiers in the world who are troubled by war, all those who put down their weapons and embraced the future. The Star Moon Army would let bygones be bygones. All enemies who dared to obstruct and resist would be killed by the Star Moon Army, no matter how far away they were. Li Yueming's words were very long. But now, his influence was too great. Therefore, even if it was just a tone verb, it was perfectly restored and conveyed. As the saying goes, it's easy to see the king of hell. The high-level forces of the various countries that had stopped the Star Moon troop from sweeping across the world had basically been wiped out in the battle outside the 100,000 mountains. The 12 patriarchs were the core of maintaining order in the 6 nations. Destroying them meant that the royal families of the 6 dynasties were basically empty shells. In fact, there was no longer any foundation to rule the world. As for those who were not finished yet, they only needed Li Yueming or the old ancestor to personally go to the imperial palaces of the various countries and they could easily deal with them. Therefore, it was no longer the royal families of the various countries that were blocking the Star Moon troop from unifying the world, but the middle and low-level nobles and aristocratic families of the various countries that had yet to figure out the situation. Li Yueming's current rumors gave them an attitude of putting down their weapons and letting bygones be bygones. Otherwise, this war to unify the 9 provinces would probably be difficult to end in a short period of time. As for whether they knew what was good for them, it was not within Li Yueming's consideration. After the upper echelons of Great Qi and Great Song were forcefully disintegrated, the entire internal order was in chaos. The generals and soldiers on the front lines could not form a fighting force without clear instructions from the higher UPS. Coupled with Li Yueming's personal promise to lay down their weapons and let bygones be bygones, in the face of death and survival, the vast majority of people naturally chose survival without any suspense. Under the influence of many factors, the Star Moon troop did not encounter much resistance and smoothly advanced all the way to the two kings' capitals. It was only in the capital that they encountered some decent resistance. Some nobles and aristocratic families who were unwilling to give up their authority had mobilized their forces to rely on the capital to fight against the Star Moon army. However, this did not affect the unstoppable and powerful offensive of the Star Moon army at all. In the third month after the war began, the Great Qi and Great Song were officially destroyed. At this point, 3 of the 6 nations that had been passed down from the Tiandu dynasty had been destroyed, leaving only the terrified Great Qin, Great Ming, and Great Tang. Now, no matter how stupid they were, they knew that their ancestors were probably all gone. Otherwise, Li Yueming would not have the courage to declare war on the world. The problem was that the 12 elders at the peak of the Nirvana realm attacked together, but not only did they fail to kill Li Yueming, but they were all killed by him instead. Did Li Yueming still have any opponents in this world? Chapter 679, Opening the God Burial Ground. In just one day, the royal families of the Great Qi and Great Song had been reduced to ashes by the mysterious expert. When the news reached them, the entire world fell silent. How did this world end? There was actually a mysterious expert who dared to barge into the imperial palaces of various countries and start a massacre? Almost everyone's first reaction after hearing the news was disbelief. Each country had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, and the order of the world had not changed much in such a long period of time. This was enough to highlight the transcendence of the 6 countries. How could they not have trump cards and be so easily slaughtered? Such an outcome was hard to accept. It was also very difficult to understand. Countless rumors and gossip had enveloped the land. At this moment, the group of people finally remembered what had happened outside the 100,000 mountains some time ago. Back then, when the cause of the unrest was investigated, there was a brief discussion that was not mainstream. Some people speculated that the real cause of the sudden change in the 100,000 mountains was the war between the awakened ancestor of the 6 nations and Li Yueming of the Star Moon army. The process of this war was not revealed to outsiders, but who won and who lost would directly determine the fate of millions of people in this world. From the conclusion that Li Yueming had appeared safely in North Glacier Town, it was very likely that the ancestors of the 6 countries did not get what they wanted. Otherwise, Li Yueming would not have appeared in North Glacier Town as if nothing had happened. The only thing he couldn't figure out was whether the 6 forefathers had suffered any injuries. However, because this inference was too shocking, it did not attract much attention from the outside world at that time. But now, there were more and more signs that the order of this world seemed to have been completely reshuffled by most people. The theory that the 6 nations were the supreme rulers of the world had finally been completely overthrown. Even the royal families of the 6 nations that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years had been washed away in this reshuffle. What replaced it was the Star Moon Empire, which was getting more and more powerful. As a result, the argument that was scoffed at by others appeared again and finally attracted the attention of people from all over the world. If his deduction was correct. Not long ago, the ancestors of the 6 countries who established the world order should have woken up briefly. They all went to northern Glacier Town to encircle Li Yueming. The primeval forest thousands of miles away from the 100,000 mountains was reduced to ashes under the battle between the 2 sides. As for the final outcome of the war, from the conclusion of the observations so far, it was estimated that Li Yueming had won a great victory and personally killed a group of old monsters who had stood in the clouds and overlooked the world for tens of thousands of years. Such power was truly terrifying. After disintegrating the superstructures of the various countries, the remaining scattered resistance basically could not cause too much of a storm. In the next half a year, the mighty Star Moon Army began to send talents and soldiers to various places to seize the occupied cities. Such a huge territory and the huge amount of wealth seized from the imperial palaces of various countries caused the power of the Star Moon dynasty to rapidly expand. The internal structure was changing day by day. With Li Yueming in charge of North Ice River Town, as long as it wasn't him personally taking action, the Star Moon dynasty sweeping across the 6 countries and unifying the world would become the trend. No one in the world dared to disobey. Therefore, Li Yueming didn't waste his energy on those trivial matters that had already been settled. After making his stance clear to the world, he began to consolidate his cultivation. This world involved everything, and it was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. It was also because of this that Li Yueming could now practice to the peak of this world's theory. But in the end, he did not dare to stop. Just like that, half a year passed quietly. In the 6th year of the Star Moon dynasty's Northern Ice River calendar, Little Fox, who had not heard from her for a long time, sent a message to Li Yueming, saying that she was ready to go to the endless volcano to open the god's burial ground. She urged Li Yueming to go to the 100,000 mountains to meet her as soon as possible after settling the matters in the outside world. After receiving the news, Li Yueming ended his cultivation. He brought Suoxian, who had already become a part of Northern Glacier Town, and quietly left Northern Glacier Town on a normal afternoon. He headed to the 100,000 mountains to meet up with the little fox. A few days later, he saw the 100,000 mountains getting closer and closer. Li Yueming's eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Ever since he entered this world, he had formed a very magical fate with this land. Every time he stepped in or left, it seemed that his life had entered a completely different stage. When Li Yueming entered the 100,000 mountains to find the little fox, he was surprised to find that the originally lazy little fox had transformed into a young woman in her 20s. At a glance, the young lady's skin was as smooth as cream, her eyes were as clear as autumn water, and her skin under the beast-skin coat was as white as the flawless snow on the peak of a snowy mountain. A pair of nimble fox ears was still retained on her black and yellowish hair. After seeing Li Yueming, the little fox was very happy. She spun around and said, "How is it?" Li Yueming didn't say anything. After silently sizing him up for a while, he rubbed his chin and asked, "Your tail, is it a plug-in or a pendant?" Chapter 680, Opening the God Burial Ground. Li Yueming still felt that something was strange. How should he put it, why did it feel a little familiar? Seeing his face full of doubts about life, the little fox suddenly smiled again and said with a sly look, "Didn't you bring a girl with you last time?" This king changed according to her appearance and even optimized it according to its characteristics. "Do you like it?" Listen to her announce her name. Li Yueming finally understood. No wonder he felt that the little fox in front of him was a little familiar. It turned out that it was based on the change in Suxuan's appearance last time. So Suxuan was still at the door. Wasn't this awkward? After some simple greetings, the little fox returned to its original posture. Only then did the two of them get down to business. In the past half a year, not only did Li Yueming think of all ways to increase his strength, but the little fox also did not idle at all. She went to the place where her mother died and learned all the legacies left behind by the Snow Fox King. She also took advantage of this opportunity to successfully leave her infancy and enter adulthood. Changing into a human form was one of the characteristics of an adult extreme frost snow fox. Only when the little fox's bloodline was concentrated after adulthood could it successfully open the door to the God Burial Ground. Although this world had not yet deviated from the right track. However, no one knew if he would appear or when he would appear. However, with just a little thought, one could guess that he would probably be a catastrophe to the entire world. Therefore, every minute and every second of time was precious and could not be easily wasted. 3 days later, Li Yueming, Little Fox, Su Xian, and the others arrived at the Su clan. Su Haoshan led his clansmen to welcome them. After sensing the unfathomable aura from Li Yueming's body, Su Haoshan couldn't help but feel speechless. One had to know that the last time Li Yueming came here, although his strength was not weak, he was still very strong. At least, he still dared to compete with Li Yueming. But how many years had passed? He had painstakingly studied it, but he had only broken through a major realm. However, Li Yueming, who had similar strength back then, had already grown to the point where even a wisp of his aura could make his hair stand on end. When he learned of Li Yueming's destination, Su Haoshan wasn't surprised. In fact, it would be strange if Li Yueming didn't come to a place like the God Burial Ground with his amazing talent and world-devouring mentality. Su Haoshan thought for a moment and said, "If it was decades ago, I would have advised you not to bite off more than you can chew. The existence buried in the God Burial Ground is not something ordinary people can reach. But now that you have grown to a level that I can't predict, I won't say anything to persuade you. However, the Su clan doesn't have a way to enter the core of the divine grave burial ground." "All right." Li Yueming nodded. "I just need to trouble you to bring me to the area where the God burial ground is located. I've already prepared the rest." The God burial ground was like an independent space that had no roots. It opened in different places every year. Only the clan leader Su Haoshan, who had been worshipping the gods for generations, could accurately find its location. Seeing how indifferent he was, Su Haoshan couldn't help but nod his head. He didn't waste any more time and directly led the group of people into the depths of the endless volcano. Halfway through the journey, Su Haoshan's gaze repeatedly swept towards the little fox. In the end, he said with some uncertainty, Are you the Snow Mountain Spirit Fox King? The only descendant left behind by that person." The little fox was originally a little listless as she squatted on Li Yueming's shoulder. She was used to living in the snowy mountains. It was her first time coming to the hot volcanoes, so she was naturally uncomfortable. Upon hearing Su Haoshan's question, the little fox's spirits were lifted. She raised her head and said, "This king is the real deal." Seeing that the little fox actually admitted it, Su Haoshan's pupils could not help but contract abruptly. Looking at the little fox on Li Yueming's shoulder, and then looking at the indifferent Li Yueming, Su Haoshan was so scared that he almost jumped 3 feet high. The Su clan had lived in the 100,000 mountains for thousands of years, so they naturally knew a lot of information about the 100,000 mountains. There were countless beast kings in the 100,000 mountains, but there was only one recognized king of the snow mountains, and that was the spirit fox king of the extremely cold snow mountains. Moreover, it was because of the era's sacrifice to the god burial ground. Su Haoshan knew more than ordinary people. The spirit fox king of the extremely cold snow mountain was the only bloodline left behind by the snow fox king, and the snow fox king was inextricably linked to the one in the god burial ground. In other words, this little fox in front of them could be considered an existence at the level of their Su clan's ancestor. Of course, this was not the most ridiculous thing in his opinion. The most ridiculous thing was that such an existence was now lazily lying on Li Yueming's shoulder. So this young man had unknowingly reached this stage? No wonder he needed to find and enter the god burial ground. He had complicated thoughts. Su Fengtian brought the 3 of them to an altar. This altar was not in the same place as the altar that Li Yueming had come to last time. It was obvious that it was because the god burial ground had moved. Chapter 681, Opening the God Burial Ground. The portal that did not exist in this world suddenly appeared, and the surrounding time and space became somewhat distorted, emitting strands of terrifying fluctuations. The last time he entered with the thought of giving up everything he had. Li Yueming didn't have such a feeling. However, as his strength grew stronger, he did not feel relaxed when facing this place again. Instead, he felt more and more terrified. Just like in the past, Su Haoshan maintained the passage outside. Only Li Yueming, Suxian, and the little fox went in. After entering the entrance of the god burial ground, the temperature inside was even higher than outside. Logically speaking, Li Yueming was already a peak nirvana realm expert, so his resistance to high temperatures should be much stronger than before. But in reality, Li Yueming did not feel any difference. This further confirmed Li Ming's speculation that the danger level of the god burial ground was not directly related to one's cultivation level. The dangers faced by nirvana stage cultivators and return to void stage cultivators were the same. The two people and one fox followed Suxian's directions and followed a path that had no end in sight. ENL.M. After walking a short distance, Li Yueming and Suxian were already drenched in sweat. Only the little fox was extremely unusual. When she was outside, she felt that the temperature was very high and it was difficult for her to adapt. However, after entering the god burial ground, she did not feel hot anymore. She was even full of energy. She took the initiative to jump off Li Yueming's shoulder and lead the way. Even Suxian was flabbergasted. She had always thought that concubine Su should be the one closest to the god burial ground in the world. Because of this, the Su clan was able to travel freely in the god burial ground. But now that she saw the little fox, she knew that she was wrong. The god burial ground was very lenient to the little fox. The little fox walked in front and did not even need to stop on the path that needed to be carefully searched and explored. After the thick fog that was filled with sulfur smell dispersed, a path would automatically be revealed. The little fox felt like she had returned home. The depths of the god burial ground was still desolate, with all living things dying. Lava that was as red as blood flowed, and the surging lava emitted raging smoke. Under the guidance of the little fox, Li Yueming and Suxian had a smooth journey. They arrived at the huge stone door in the core area of the god burial ground in less than 1/3 of the time. Looking at the stone door that was as thick as a mountain in front of her, the little fox's originally excited face suddenly revealed a touch of sorrow. The stone door was engraved with a huge image of an extreme cold spiritual fox. If nothing went wrong, this should be its mother. However, the problem was that the little fox had never seen her mother with her own eyes. Now that she had finally met her, it was a lifeless stone carving. They were separated by the furthest distance in the world. Wasn't it cruel to her? A sad look flashed in her eyes. The little fox restrained her emotions and turned to look at Li Yueming. "You guys retreat, I'm opening the door." Li Yueming nodded and took Suxian back dozens of steps. After the two of them left, only then did the little fox turn around again. It used its sharp canine teeth to bite its forefoot, dripping dark red blood onto the stone. Bit by bit, as the little fox's blood seeped into it, wisps of blood-red light bloomed. The stone inscription in front of him seemed to come alive. The huge and oppressive extreme frost snow fox suddenly opened its eyes. Chapter 682, Our First Meeting. 1. The carving of the Arctic snow fox on the stone door emitted wisps of blood-colored light, as if it had come alive. Looking at the little fox, the snow fox's eyes were very gentle. Hearing her question, the little fox's emotions fluctuated. She paused and said, "You are, my mother." The snow fox replied softly, "I'm just a remnant. I'm stationed here to prevent unrelated people from disturbing the Lord's sleep. Besides, I haven't fulfilled my duty as a mother, so I don't seem to have the right to call myself that in front of you." The little fox did not speak. After a while, she said, "In that case, please open the stone door." The snow fox's gaze swept past the little fox and did not linger for long before it swept its gaze towards Li Yueming and Suxian, who was beside Li Yueming. It then said, "You are my bloodline, and the man behind you has obtained the recognition of his ancestors. The two of you can enter. As for the So clan, forget it, considering that you have defended the mausoleum for the Lord, I will make an exception and allow you to enter once." As he spoke, the snow fox phantom turned around and made a path for her. The door behind her that was blocked by a huge rock suddenly opened. when the door was still open. Although my lord has fallen, he will not die so easily. What kind of opportunities you will have will depend on yourself. In addition, I have to remind you that no one has entered the master's resting place for many years, she said with a faint expression. I don't know if there was a spatial collapse or a space-time turbulence inside, or if something else had quietly entered. For the sake of your lives, you must not stray too far from the core region. After he finished speaking, the door behind the snow fox opened almost at the same time. A burst of fiery light burst out from inside the door. The light was so dazzling that even Li Yueming had to close his eyes. After a long time, when they opened their eyes again, they realized that the scene in front of them was completely different from the scene in their memories. If the outer area of the god burial ground gave people the feeling that it was an underground place with lava flowing, it would not be a place that was filled with lava. Then, the god burial ground in front of him was a world independent of time and space. Broken, cold, desolate, the ground was covered with shattered hard rocks and all kinds of messy iron fragments. Li Yueming was fine. After all, he had experienced this kind of space jump scene countless times. Even if he was not mentally prepared this time, he only showed a slight surprise. He quickly calmed down. However, it was obvious that neither Little Fox nor Suxian had such an experience. At this moment, they were all dumbfounded by the scene in front of them. How should he put it? This place was too big. It was many times larger than they had imagined. All kinds of fragments and iron wreckage gave them the illusion that they were at the end of the universe. They finally came back to their senses. The three of them remembered the instructions of the snow fox and restrained their curiosity to investigate. They moved together and slowly passed through the ruins that were filled with debris. If there was a core location in this world, then the direction they were heading in must be the most likely to be the core area, because they could see wisps of starlight on both sides. The surrounding scene also seemed very real, and there was nothing strange about it. However, just as the three of them were still muttering, the scene in front of him suddenly became clear. At this moment, everyone finally saw something unbelievable. In the deepest part of the broken and silent space, there was an ancient and huge stone coffin. Its length, width, and height had already exceeded the limits of what one could see. And it seemed that because it was too huge, there were no patterns on the ancient coffin that looked very rough and mottled. If not for the fact that the coffin's shape was too eye-catching, no one would be able to associate the huge rock in front of them with the coffin. How should he put it? This ancient coffin looked like a dead world from afar. Suxian, who had the lowest realm among the three of them, only raised her head to look at the stone coffin. She was so suppressed by the strands of aura that were inadvertently leaking out of it that she could not speak. After struggling for a long time, she said with a red face, "Is this the coffin of that person? The god we have guarded for generations." Just a coffin was so huge. The little fox glanced at Suxian. Although she was also surprised, she did not want to show her fear in front of a junior like Suxian. Thus, he forced himself to show a disdainful expression of rolling his eyes. He looked at Suxian as if he was looking at a country bumpkin who had never seen the world. He said proudly, "Master and Mother are both universe-level supreme beings, how could a little girl like you who has never seen the world understand how terrifying they are?" Suxian lowered her head when she heard that. Her pretty face also turned red. It was unknown whether it was because she was shocked by the huge coffin in the distance or because she was mocked by the little fox, or perhaps both. Only Li Yueming was relatively calm. Although the coffin was indeed huge, the supreme being of the bug tribe he had seen before was even bigger than this. If this supreme martial artist died in the war with the Zergs, then it was normal for him to have a big coffin. RWVEL.O. Chapter 683, Our First Meeting. 2. There was no other way. This world was too dilapidated. There was not a single place that could contain opportunities. If he did not approach the giant coffin, he would not know where to look for opportunities. As they got closer and closer to the giant coffin, the three of them could clearly feel that the environment around them had changed drastically. The closer he got to the huge coffin, the smaller the coffin that was as huge as a star in the universe became. At the same time, the surrounding temperature became more and more chaotic. The cold and hot airflow was like a knife, cutting people all over. The distance was getting closer and closer. The three of them discovered that there were actually two rivers flowing beside the giant coffin. The other was a river of fire that was as red as blood and illuminated the entire sky red. The boiling lava was the life of this river. The terrifying heat emitted from the flowing process caused the space to distort. The other was the bone-chilling Yin River. The Yin River did not freeze. However, the coldness was so dense that it was enough to make the little fox, who lived in the extremely cold snow mountain all year round, shiver. Two rivers, one hot and one cold, flowed around the coffin like the dividing line between life and death. It was unknown where the river originated from, but the final destination was undoubtedly the giant coffin that had become normal size. The three of them still did not feel anything when they were more than 10 meters away from the coffin. However, just as the three of them were about to move forward to investigate, Li Yueming stopped for some reason. Little Fox and Suxian stopped at the same time and looked at Li Yueming with confusion. Li Yueming didn't say anything. His eyes were fixed on the corner under the coffin. Only then did the two of them follow his line of sight. Only then did he realize that there was a black blood stain at the bottom of the coffin. The black blood was at the bottom of the coffin, and only a small corner was exposed. If one did not pay attention, they would not be able to see it. Black blood actually flowed out of the coffin that buried the god. This discovery made the three of them feel uneasy. Only then did they stop the urge to get close to the coffin and investigate. Instead, they circled around the coffin to observe. After walking half a circle around the coffin, only then did the three of them realize that there was an altar on the other side of the coffin. There were many things piled up on the altar. This discovery made the three of them feel refreshed. After entering this place for so long, the three of them had not seen anything of value other than the ruins. It was indeed a little different from what he had expected. Now that they could see an altar, perhaps they could fulfill their wishes. They carefully bypassed the two rivers. The aura of ice and fire emitted from them made people feel very uncomfortable, but it was still within the range that the three of them could endure. After entering the altar, the first thing that entered the eyes of Li Yueming and the other two was a giant stone slab. A human figure was carved on the stone slab. In addition, very dazzling, very dazzling, very dazzling, very dazzling, very dazzling, very dazzling. Compared to the inconspicuous marks on the bottom of the stone coffin, the bloodstains on the stone slab were much clearer and more ferocious. The black blood stained the slate, causing the carvings on the stone slabs to be severely corroded. In many places, only a few shallow marks were left. One could only see a rough outline, but one could not see its true appearance. The three of them stopped in front of the stone slab. They looked at the stone slab in front of them with strange expressions and did not know what to do. Li Yueming could not help but frown. The black blood stains on the stone slab made him feel a familiar aura again. If he remembered correctly, the blood that had dripped from his body when he had supported the ancestors of the 6 dynasties to use the so-called God's Descent secret technique to raise their combat strength to the peak had also been black. Although the blood that the ancestors of the 6 states had dripped was far from being comparable to the blood that was now on the stone slab, it was still not enough. However, there was no doubt that the two originated from the same source. This discovery undoubtedly proved that the so-called him who controlled the ancestors of the 6 dynasties had a deep connection with the existence that killed the master of the god burial ground. Or perhaps the two were the same person. This discovery didn't make Li Yueming feel relaxed, but it made his heart even heavier. If the other party was really a universe-grade supremacy, then even if the owner of the god burial ground was resurrected, he wouldn't be able to turn the situation around, let alone the fact that he was only at the nirvana stage. Perhaps it was safer to stop the losses and run as soon as possible. However, Li Yueming believed that it shouldn't be that ridiculous. After all, the reincarnation mark only needed reincarnation points. It was not ridiculous enough to issue a mission that was completely impossible to complete and let the reincarnators die in vain. He looked at the slate that was stained with black blood. For a moment, the three of them were in a dilemma, not knowing what to do. In the end, it was the little fox who spoke up. This stone slab is humanoid, but the material and carvings are not much different from the stone door guarding the outside world. Why don't the two of you try to use your blood to awaken it? This proposal was still considered reasonable. Suxuan volunteered to be a test subject. She bit her finger and used her spiritual energy to control the blood flow to the stone slab. This action did not trigger a response from the stone slab at first. Chapter 684, Our First Meeting. 3. But in the end, it did not come to life like the stone slabs outside. Suxuan took a few steps back with a pale face. Clearly, she had failed. It was unknown whether it was because the stone slab was too damaged or because her blood could not resonate with the stone slab. Without hesitation, Li Yueming also went forward and bit his finger to try. This time, when his dark red blood was injected into the stone slab finally showed obvious changes. More and more red light was flashing continuously, as if it was charging the stone slab. Even the figure engraved on the stone slab emitted red light several times, as if it wanted to wake up. However, the three of them waited for a long time. Even when Li Yueming's body could not withstand the speed of blood loss, the figure pattern on the stone slab still did not come to life as before. It was probably because the damage was too serious and the divinity in the patterns was lost, causing the stone slab to completely become a common object. However, just as Li Yueming was about to give up, a voice suddenly came from the stone slab. The dignified and imposing voice sighed and said, "I've waited for you for many years. The methods I left behind have all been destroyed in the river of time, but I didn't expect that one of them would still come in handy." The moment this voice sounded, the three of them, including Li Yueming, were stunned. Waiting for you for many years? Who was he waiting for? Li Yueming? Did the other party know that they would come here? The three of them were full of questions, but the owner of the voice seemed to have no intention of explaining. He just continued, "Traveler from another time and space, perhaps you are full of questions about everything around you, but please don't panic." When he heard the words otherworldly wayfare, Li Yueming's entire head buzzed as if it had exploded, so much so that he didn't hear a single word of his comforting words. He did not expect the other party to be able to see through his identity as a reincarnator at a glance. After all, under the disguise of the reincarnation mark, even the world consciousness of their respective reincarnation worlds might not be able to accurately identify their existence. But now, a spiritual remnant that could not even be considered a human knew. This was undoubtedly a huge shock to Li Yueming. A creature that could clearly recognize the existence of a reincarnator at a glance represented a huge power that meant that the other party could kill Li Yueming on all levels. Even the reincarnation mark could not protect him from returning. The unlucky reincarnators who occasionally died in the prime material plane were also killed because they encountered such unreasonable existences. This resulted in them being unable to return and dying completely. To reincarnators, this was simply a nightmarish existence. Fortunately, the stone slab in front of him was only a trace of spiritual residue and not a real creature. Moreover, the reincarnation mark did not give any warning, so it should not have any malicious intentions towards him. Suppressing her somewhat uneasy heart, Li Yueming calmly replied, "Since you know everything, there's no need for me to ask any more, right? Please tell me what you can answer me, what you can give me, and what you need me to do." The existence in the stone slab seemed to reveal a smile. Although he couldn't see or touch it, Li Yueming could still clearly sense that the other party was watching him. Chapter 685, The Truth Behind the Mark of Reincarnation. 1. This is the first time we've met? The words described by the existence in the stone slab stunned the three people present. Su Xian and Little Fox did not need to say much as they were completely confused by these words. Only Li Yueming, who knew the truth, felt even more shocked when he heard this. We were the mysterious force that wrote to Li Yueming. Its existence could even bypass the reincarnation mark and directly send the letter to the mailbox to contact Li Yueming without alerting the reincarnation mark. According to Li Yueming's guesses, the other party should be related to the reincarnation mark, or even the creator of the reincarnation mark. Otherwise, there was no way to explain how she could contact him so smoothly. However, the information revealed by the stone slab in front of him mercilessly broke Li Yueming's imagination. The so-called us were not mysterious existences from the prime material plane, but creatures with physical bodies in the public reincarnation instance dungeon. This news was too shocking. Li Yueming couldn't even imagine who could do all of this. He seemed to have sensed Li Yueming's shock. The remnant of the spirit engraved on the stone tablet smiled and said, "I know you have a lot of questions. Since that's the case, let me introduce myself. My name is Su Wu, and I am the commander of the Order Alliance's Third Army from the end of the Sixth Era to the beginning of the Seventh Era. I am in charge of setting up a defense line to defend against the Zergs from the Third Universe Nest." After hearing Su Wu's self-introduction, this time, not to mention Li Yueming, even Little Fox and Su Xian could not help but widen their eyes. To them, the terms Sixth and Seventh Epochs, Cosmic Calendar and Commander-in-Chief of the Alliance of Order mentioned by the other party were too distant. He couldn't even imagine how magnificent it was. However, one thing was certain. The expert behind the stone tablet in front of him was very powerful. Even in the entire universe, he was close to being invincible. But now, such an existence could only talk to them through this stone tablet. If it was not unexpected, it would have died in this world for many years. In the end, Li Yueming was the first to calm down. He looked at the ancient stone tablet in front of him and said, "So what's your relationship with the reincarnation mark? And how did you know that I would come here?" Hearing this, the spiritual fluctuation in the stone tablet paused for a moment before sighing and replying, "Is the mark of reincarnation the result? Forget it. To be able to see you now is the greatest success for the Order faction after putting in countless efforts. I don't have a strict relationship with the reincarnation mark that you mentioned. If I have to say it, I might be considered one of the core people involved in this universe-grade space-time treasure. Of course, I'm only responsible for collecting the materials. It's not up to me to interfere with the specific research. Universe-level space-time treasure." This was the second time Li Yueming had heard such a term. The first time he heard it was from the Little Fox. According to Little Fox's description back then, her mother and the existence in the God Burial Ground fought with the enemy over a universe-grade space-time treasure. In the end, they died here with hatred. It could be said that the stone tablet in front of him was right. In this way, the spiritual fluctuation contained in the stone tablet in front of him was undoubtedly the Little Fox's master. However, Li Yueming still noticed a problem. If the remnant spiritual fluctuation of the stone tablet in front of him was the Little Fox's master, then the Little Fox's master was the Little Fox's master. Then where did the black blood stains and stains on the stone tablet come from? What was the relationship between the reincarnation mark and the so-called universe-grade space-time treasure? My time is limited, so I can't answer all your questions. Next, I will try my best to explain the whole thing clearly. This is the final mission that my remnant soul has to complete. The remaining spiritual waves on the stone slab continued. Before we talk about the universe-level time-space treasure, I have to tell you about the grudges between the Bug Clan and the other races in the universe. In short, the war between the Bug Clan and the various races in the universe has lasted for 7 eras. In these 7 eras of war, the various races in the universe only obtained some advantages in the first 3 eras. As time passed, the Zergs evolved stronger and stronger through the terrifying reproduction speed that was like a natural disaster. In the next few eras, all the major races were forced to retreat in front of the Zergs without any resistance. The end of the third epoch and the beginning of the fourth epoch were the times when the races shed the most blood. One after another, the incomparably prosperous star areas were taken away by the bug tribe and turned into nourishment for their race to multiply and grow. All the races in the universe, who had suffered heavy losses, were under pressure. They began to unite to form an alliance of order to jointly resist the invasion of the Zerg. After the establishment of the Alliance of Order, the barbaric expansion of the Zergs has finally been curbed to a certain extent. Chapter 686, The Truth Behind the Mark of Reincarnation. 2. At the end of the Fifth Era, under the attacks of more and more Queen Mothers, the Alliance of Order suffered serious blows one after another. If no one stood up to turn the tide, the Alliance of Order might not even last until the Sixth Era. However, during this most silent period of time in the entire universe, two incomparably dazzling new stars appeared among the originally not-so-dazzling human race. At this point, So Wu's voice paused on the stone slab. Li Yueming could clearly feel the other party's non-existent gaze sizing him up. He couldn't help but reveal a puzzled expression and asked, "And then?" What So Wu introduced was the background of an unknown universe. Even the units were calculated in eras. In the face of such a terrifying amount of time, Li Yueming really didn't know what he had to do with the above content. So Wu obviously ignored him and continued, "These two new stars are brother and sister. They came from a very inconspicuous small place. They transcended their respective small worlds and wandered in the myriad worlds. They grew all the way and finally became the strongest existences in the Order Alliance. You might be wondering why I'm telling you this, right? Then I'll introduce you to another existence. You should understand. At the end of the Sixth Era, my superior, who is also the Commander-in-Chief of the Alliance of Law, was called Li Ziyu." The moment Li Ziyu said those three words, Li Yueming froze on the spot. Not to mention his body, even his mind stopped thinking for a moment. So Wu's voice paused for a moment, giving Li Yueming some buffer time before he continued, "Not only that, but the brother of the Commander-in-Chief was also the number one person in the Alliance of Law at that time. Guess what his name was?" Li Yueming didn't say anything. However, in her heart, she already had the answer. So Wu didn't say it out loud and changed the topic. The beginning of the Sixth Era should have been the most dazzling period of time for humanity in the universe. The names of humans shone like stars, illuminating the universe that was originally dead and cold due to the invasion of the Zerg. In the Sixth Era, the war between the bugs and the Alliance of Order reached its climax. Every moment, millions of lives were fighting against the hideous bugs in the desolate lands at the edge of the universe, swearing to protect the last remaining pure land. The human constellations have also made their move. Commander-in-Chief Li Ziyu personally killed more than 10 Zerg empresses, and her brother was even more ferocious among ferocious people. In order to protect a small blue planet, he directly charged into the depths of the Zerg mother nest, killing 6 Saint Emperors in a row and destroying 12 Grade 8 Zerg nests. Such a powerful battle force made the bug tribe feel terrified. Even though the bug tribe used a massive bug tide that could destroy one's heart and 12 Saint Emperors to successfully kill that powerful existence, the shadow that it left behind for the bug tribe was engraved in their bones. As a result, the bug tribe didn't dare to take a single step into the territory of the Order Alliance from the Sixth Era until the end of the Sixth Era. Unfortunately, at the beginning of the Seventh Era, the bug tribe army appeared in the vision of the Alliance of Law again, but it was even stronger than before. Hearing this, not to mention So Wu, who had personally experienced the changes of the times, even Li Yueming himself felt deeply powerless. The existence of such a race was a terrifying thing. There were countless of them. Furthermore, he was always getting stronger through rapid transformations. Just like a cockroach that couldn't be killed, as long as it was given a little breathing time, it could recover its vitality or even become even more terrifying. Many people in the Alliance of Law and Order have given up hope in this hopeless war. They have even suggested giving up on their base camp in the universe and moving to a small plane, hoping to survive. In the end, it was the Commander-in-Chief who personally vetoed this suicidal proposal. After realizing that they could not escape, everyone placed their hopes on the Commander-in-Chief, hoping that she could come up with a plan to turn the situation around. After evolving to that extent, the Zergs were no longer something that the Alliance of Order could resist. The only way the Commander-in-Chief could think of to win was to turn back time to the 6th epoch and lead the entire Alliance of Order to accompany his brother in a fight to the death against the Zergs. You should have roughly guessed what happened after that. The Alliance of Order used all their power to search for the legendary supreme treasure that could reverse time and space and change the past, the Tesseract. They wanted to use the Tesseract to create a space-time treasure that could change the past in the future. In this way, not only will we be able to find a way to rewrite the fate of that person in countless time nodes, but we can also gather the countless generations of powerhouses of the entire human race together and train more talents for the Alliance of Order to face the ultimate war that concerns the fate of the universe. This is the plan to raise the Queen because it is not determined, the factor is too much, even once it is unable to carry out the face of shell-shelving. I chose to believe in the Commander-in-Chief's judgment, so I never gave up. In the end, I became the first person to find the Tesseract. Even though I still couldn't escape from the Zerg's ambush, I still managed to deliver the supreme treasure to the Commander-in-Chief. Now, to be able to see you at this time, this plan may be more successful than I expected. Hearing this. Chapter 687, The Truth Behind the Mark of Reincarnation. 3. If he was still confused by the various wars that were based on eras, then he would be able to tell that this was the case. Now, Li Yueming already knew the general context of the whole matter. But even so, he still felt that it was a little illusory. So the Tesseract was the mark of reincarnation in his hands? Although it seemed unbelievable at first glance, Li Yueming realized that there was nothing wrong with it. When the reincarnation mark was awakened, an awakening ritual was needed. Although the prime material plane had always believed that the talents in the rebirth mark were randomly refreshed, it was still a pity. However, Li Yueming had always been skeptical about this. Assuming that the mark of reincarnation was an item created by a higher existence, then there must be a reason for its existence. How could it randomly give ordinary people talents without any meaning? If it was as So Wu had said, the reincarnation mark would be given to the known future strongest human beings, everything would make sense. However, Li Yueming still had a question in this situation. He asked, "Why is my talent different from others?" So Wu's spiritual fluctuation was a little confused. After a moment, he explained, "I don't know what your so-called talent is. The only thing I can tell you is the concept of the Rubik's Cube project." Let me think. If I'm not wrong, in order to avoid being discovered by the Zergs, you should be in a relatively independent and sealed small space. Other than the Tesseract, nothing else should be able to enter your world. Since the Tesseract is called the reincarnation imprint, it should be an extension of the second version of the plan. The so-called talent should be something that the awakened possess. The Tesseract only allows the awakened to obtain it in advance, thereby greatly reducing the growth rate of the awakened. Under such circumstances, it was normal for your talent to be different from others. With your uniqueness, it would be strange if your talent was the same as others. The rules set by the Tesseract will lead you to different worlds in different space-time and universes for training. After returning, it will absorb a portion of the power from the world it is in and return it to you. When you are strong enough, when the day of your destiny arrives, you will bear the hopes of the past and the future, and save this universe that is about to turn into the ashes of the Zerg army. This explanation should be the clearest answer that So Wu could give. After all, he was not directly involved in the specific matters of the Tesseract. He was only one of the few people who knew about it. Li Yueming touched his chin. His heart was already in a mess. He finally calmed down and asked, "So you're here just to tell me about this?" "Yes." So Wu nodded. Then what would have happened if I hadn't come today? It doesn't matter if you didn't come. Anyway, to you, I'll always be here. Even without me, there will still be others who will tell you. The mark will guide you, and you will understand everything sooner or later. At this point, So Wu smiled bitterly. But how should I put it? Your appearance here is actually not a good thing. What do you mean? Li Yueming asked with a puzzled expression. If you see me, you die, you are in the beginning of the 7th era, you are in the middle of the battle. However, because you touched the Tesseract, you left a time anchor point in your body. Even if you die, as long as your body does not disappear, this anchor point will always be fixed here. Even though the Saint Emperor who killed me had no choice but to leave because of his injuries, he must have left a backup plan in this world. Once he senses your appearance, he will definitely not let it go, so you might be killed. Li Yueming Concealment. Chapter 688, In the Sea of Energy, the road ahead was fiery and bright. 1. The universe-level supreme being who fought against So Wu and won. To Li Yueming, it was an unimaginable existence. When he heard that the other party had already set his eyes on him, Li Yueming immediately thought of the unknown him. If there was anything in this world that could match the image of the supreme insect that So Wu had mentioned, then he who stood above the world and overlooked all rules and order was undoubtedly the most likely existence. He thought about how he might have been an enemy of such an existence all along. Li Yueming could not help but feel a lingering fear in his heart. After all, the other party was an existence that could really cut off the connection between the reincarnation mark and the reincarnators and kill them in the other world. It was no wonder that the mark of reincarnation would raise the rating of this world to the most terrifying level 9. He could feel the panic in Li Yueming's emotions. So Wu's remaining spiritual fluctuations emitted a wave of calming energy as he said, judging from your reactions, perhaps you have already come into contact with it in the outside world? Is it impossible to return to the sealed world you are in now? Li Yueming's expression wasn't too good. He nodded and said, if nothing unexpected happens, we have indeed been targeted. The reincarnation mark reminds us that the world's level is too high and we can't take the initiative to leave. So Wu smiled. That old bug has some plans. But you don't have to worry. In terms of strength, I'm much stronger than that bug. I lost because I couldn't fight against 4 people with 2 fists. It left behind a backup plan. How could I not have made any preparations? Hearing that So Wu was prepared, Li Yueming finally calmed down a little. After all, he came here to find more information and to see if So Wu had any backup plans. Although there had been some twists and turns, everything had finally returned to the right track without any problems. At this point, So Wu's remaining spiritual fluctuation on the stone slab seemed to be a little tired. He said intermittently, the backup plan left behind by that old monster is very powerful, but in the end, it's not its own body. It will still be obliterated by time and the world's consciousness. After so many years, its strength should have dropped drastically. If you came to this world thousands of years ago, perhaps I wouldn't be able to do anything to that old monster. But now that so many years have passed, it's still unknown who will win. I'll help you open the stone coffin later. There's some power left behind by me and the extreme frost spirit fox race's supreme expert after our deaths. You can go in and absorb it. As for how much you can absorb and whether you can successfully defeat that old monster, I cannot guarantee it. I can only guarantee that you will obtain the strength to protect yourself and not die here. When he said this, So Wu's voice paused. He looked at the little fox not far away and smiled. Little guy, your mother left a portion of the remaining energy inside. You can also go in and absorb a portion after the coffin is opened. The little fox was stunned when she heard this. After a moment, she said excitedly, "Thank you, Senior." Li Yueming thought for a while and bowed, "Thank you." Although Li Yueming didn't know how much of So Wu's words could be completely trusted, the other party didn't make things difficult for him and even prepared a way out for him. He still needed some respect. Hearing the little fox's words of gratitude, So Wu did not express much. However, So Wu's remnant soul seemed to tremble when he heard Li Yueming lean over to thank him. After a long while, he recovered from his stiffness and said reluctantly, "I dare not." The conversation ended here. So Wu's remnant soul had no intention of continuing to speak. He gathered the rest of his soul power, turning it into a hazy white halo that shot towards the stone coffin not far away. A moment later, the three of them heard the ancient stone coffin not far away open and close. "I'll leave you here." So Wu's weak voice sounded. "My remaining soul will protect you for the last time. Go." Hearing this, the three of them bowed respectfully to the stone tablet. After the ceremony, Li Yueming and Little Fox slowly got up and walked towards the stone coffin. Only Suxuan could only stay at the same place to keep watch for them because she did not have the inheritance. After the stone coffin was opened, there was no stench or unpleasant smell coming from inside. On the contrary, the closer he got, the more he could smell the fragrance in the air. Before he got very close, Li Yueming felt that his pores had involuntarily opened up, and even his skin was involuntarily swallowing the rich life aura in the stone coffin. This dispelled Li Yueming's last bit of worry. After all, he was still a little skeptical about So Wu's words and did not completely believe them. When the two of them approached, a seven-colored light bloomed from the stone coffin. Looking at the stone coffin, he realized that it was not as narrow as he had imagined. Instead, it was a hazy sea of clouds, and the material that formed this sea of clouds was all extremely dense life essence. This rich life essence was completely different from the spiritual energy of the mainstream cultivation in this world. Chapter 689, In the Sea of Energy, the road ahead was fiery and bright. 2. Moreover, the energy contained in the life essence of the sea of clouds in the coffin was much more than the energy contained in ordinary spiritual energy. After refining a small amount of life essence, it could turn into a large amount of spiritual energy. Compared to the sea of clouds formed by the extremely terrifying life essence in the coffin, the earth vein divine spring that Li Yueming had absorbed outside the god burial ground was not worth mentioning. One was in the sky and the other was on the ground. The little fox was obviously frightened as well. She looked at the endless sea of clouds in the coffin and said, "This. So many? When will we be able to absorb all of it?" No one could answer this question. He would probably only know the answer after trying. He did not hesitate. The little fox was the first to jump in and began to absorb the energy in the cloud sea. Li Yueming quickly followed him in. If the little fox felt that the rolling essence energy in the sea of clouds was almost endless, then it would be impossible for her to get rid of it. Li Yueming didn't think so. After all, the little fox specialized in cultivating spiritual energy. Even if it tried its best to absorb it, there was still a limit to the amount of spiritual energy that could be contained in its body. If he could not break through successfully after reaching the upper limit, he might explode and die if he continued to devour. However, Li Yueming didn't need to consider this problem. Although he also cultivated spirit qi, the source of his super high combat strength came from his powerful physical fitness and the various human body treasures that had been developed. After transforming the life essence into spiritual energy, he would reach the peak of the nirvana realm. Even if he could not advance further, Li Yueming could still refine this huge life essence into the human body's treasure. One had to know that Li Yueming had been mistreating his human body treasures all these years. Other than endlessly extracting its power, there were not many resources to nourish it. Now, with so much life essence, Li Yueming could go back and polish the human body treasure again to perfection. Even if there was still energy left, Li Yueming could swallow it and store it in his body as the initial power to open the next human treasure. It could be said that as long as Li Yueming was given enough time, he could definitely transform to a very terrifying level in this coffin. As for how terrifying it could be, it would depend on how magical the human body treasure would be. The only thing Li Yueming was worried about was the lack of time. After all, no one knew when he would wake up. Just as Li Yueming and the others were still starting their final cultivation in the god burial ground. The turmoil in the outside world did not end there. Li Yueming had opened up a new era. This new era belonged to Northern Ice River Town, to all the members of the Star Moon Army, and to all the people of this world. After taking down the two ancient imperial cities of Great Qi and Great Song, the two ancient imperial cities of Great Qi and Great Song were destroyed. The insufferably arrogant Star Moon dynasty had finally stopped its conquest of the Six Nations and entered a long period of digesting its gains. Originally, the Star Moon Army was just a small kingdom in the northwest of the Great Zhou dynasty. It could not even be considered a dynasty. It could only be considered a separate force. However, it was this originally unremarkable small force that had erupted with terrifying vitality over the years. Now, it had successively annexed the Great Zhou, Great Qi, and Great Song, three huge ancient countries, and leaped onto the world stage, becoming the second and only powerful country in the world. The remaining three nations of the Six Nations. Even the once arrogant Great Qin Empire could only tremble in fear in front of the Star Moon Army. One could imagine how big the Star Moon troop had been in the past few years. There was a price to pay for this rapid expansion. However, the cake that had been made over the years was big enough, and there were not many people who had a share of the cake. This eased the internal conflicts of the Star Moon Army and did not cause too many consequences. However, the territory they currently ruled had already reached the limit of the Star Moon troop. It might make people envious and jealous. However, this had indeed become the biggest problem that the Star Moon Army had to face. That was because there were too few talents who could do things. As a talent cultivation base, Glacier Town had been drained of blood in the past few years. As long as a student could read and write, and had learned a certain amount of knowledge, they were basically sent to all parts of the world. Even so, there was still not enough talent. As a last resort, the Star Moon Army could only set up schools and post recruitment notices everywhere to deal with the current situation of the lack of talents. Of course, these were not the most important points that the entire world paid attention to. After all, the entire world knew that the Star Moon troop was in desperate need of talent. Any young man with an idea would choose to give it a try. But most importantly, the order issued by the Star Moon Army did not discriminate between different social classes. Anyone who had the ability, knowledge, and moral integrity would have a chance to seek an official position in the Star Moon Army after passing the assessment set up by the Star Moon Army. This kind of operation, in the current world that emphasized the difference between families and blood relations, caused unimaginable fluctuations. Almost all the poor children in the world who had no way to seek an official position were in an uproar. They rushed toward the territory that the Star Moon Army claimed to rule like carps crossing the river. Of course, this action was naturally cursed by all the nobles and aristocratic families in the world. If not for the fact that the Star Moon troops' fists were too strong. Chapter 690, In the Sea of Energy, the road ahead was fiery and bright. 3. At this moment, the great clans would not just be beating their chests and stomping their feet as they complained. They would have already rolled up their sleeves and prepared to fight the Star Moon Army to the death. But even if the great clans didn't dare to openly oppose it. However, he had secretly used countless methods to stop it. However, no matter how much they jumped up and down, the Star Moon Army had already made up their mind, and their execution was incomparably efficient and powerful. The great clans that stood in their way were like grasshoppers after autumn, unable to change the general trend of the world. Star Moon Dynasty Northern Ice River Calendar Year 12. The first round of the talent recruitment plan had achieved very good results. All the positions in the three dynasties that the Star Moon Army ruled were filled by new recruits. At this point, the Star Moon Army had officially completed the unification of the three countries. After the initial reorganization, the town that was originally shrouded in the dark clouds of war finally breathed a sigh of relief. But even so, the world was still impoverished. Years of war had consumed too much food, and the young laborers of every household had suffered heavy casualties. These were wounds that could not be healed in a short period of time. Many of them could only be healed with time. Therefore, in the first few years, the Star Moon dynasty did not launch a drastic reform. Instead, they chose a relatively gentle recuperation and large-scale tax reduction to allow the people to recover from the shadow of war as soon as possible. This decision was obviously much better than the mess he made after going on stage. After 5 to 6 years of recuperation, the fertility rate of the people under the rule of the Star Moon dynasty had increased significantly in recent years. It was also in these few years that the Star Moon dynasty completely took over the mess in various places and began to reform and recover. In the 18th year of the Northern Ice River calendar of the Star Moon dynasty, the Star Moon Army began to set up schools throughout the country. The first classes that were set up in various places were only the elementary classes, adult classes, and official education classes. The elementary classes recruited children around the age of 6 in the country for school education, while the adult classes provided professional skills for adults. As for the official cultivation class, it was a method to restrict the officials in Northern Ice River Town. If they wanted to continue being an official, they had to meet the set assessment standards before they could be promoted. After annexing 3 countries, the Star Moon Army had obtained countless wealth and was now rich. In a short period of time, they did not have to worry about the money and food that they had invested not being able to produce. To put it simply, I have money and can afford it. In order to let the people of the country feel the power of education and not resist the act of building a school, Northern Glacier Town also sent the people of Northern Glacier Town to various places to publicize. Not only would he teach them the techniques of scientific farming, but he would also promote all kinds of excellent grain seeds. After a few punches, the people were dazzled. As a result, many people did not know what Star Moon Empire was up to. Only some knowledgeable people knew what this meant. The Star Moon Empire was digging up the roots of those great clans. If these reforms could be successfully implemented, then the entire world would probably become unimaginable. These plans were not personally led by Li Yueming. However, it was clearly written in Li Yueming's future plans for the Star Moon Army. However, the main executors had changed from Li Yueming to Li Ruxing, Li Ruyu, Ding Yi, Huang Li Er, and the other high-ranking officers of the Star Moon Army. Under the push of these two aspects, everything was progressing in an orderly manner. The road ahead was fiery and bright. Chapter 691, Overturn Everything and Change the Future from the Past. 1. Star Moon Dynasty Northern Ice River Calendar Year 22. Under the systematic implementation of the reform, the land under the control of the Star Moon Dynasty began to emit vitality. Humans were strange creatures. He would reminisce about the past. He would also embrace the future. The smoke of war had only dissipated for more than 10 years. The people under the rule of Great Qi, Great Zhou, and Great Song had already forgotten the mountains of corpses and seas of blood. They had begun to walk towards this new era that was started by the Star Moon Dynasty. Falling flowers blotted out the moonlight. Under the mottled ancient tree, there were countless sorrowful thoughts. Under the Star Moon Empire's relentless efforts, the citizens slowly understood and accepted the Star Moon Army's dream of achieving the great unity of the world. How can I have thousands of houses to shelter the poor people all over the world? In the utopia. Utopia. An ideal country. The people did not understand what a utopia was. However, the simple goal proposed by the Star Moon Empire was for everyone to have food to eat and clothes to wear. Having someone to support when young, having someone to rely on when old, they could still understand. Moreover, unlike the Great Song, Great Qi, and Great Zhou, the Star Moon Empire did not only talk about their ideals, but they also took action. Whether it was schools or high-yield crops, whether it was clean government or tools to increase production efficiency, they all declared the determination of Star Moon Empire. How long had it been since Star Moon Dynasty conquered Great Qi, Great Zhou, and Great Song? At most, it would be less than 30 years. However, in just 30 years, the lives of the people under his rule had been significantly improved, especially after the various reforms were launched. The villages and towns in various places were even more different every day. Under such circumstances, the efficiency of the people's support was terrifying. The favorability of the people towards the Star Moon Army rose almost in a straight line. Although the people were not smart, they were not stupid either. They might not listen to the government's propaganda. After all, it was not the first time the government had deceived them. It was a problem if they could even get 1 or 2 points. However, if it was also spread by the aunties of the 7 villages and 8 villages, the credibility of it would obviously become very high for them. As a result, the people of the Great Qin, Great Ming, and Great Tang had been waiting anxiously for this day. There were even quite a number of people who brought their families across the border and sneaked into the region where the Star Moon dynasty was located, just to seek a better life. It could be said that the Star Moon Empire had perfectly explained to everyone what the people's hearts were like in the Sage Book. The vast and mighty reform in the outside world was still in full swing. In the depths of the 100,000 mountains, in the god burial ground. In the stone coffin with the universe inside, Li Yueming and the little fox were sitting cross-legged on the ground. Countless life essence surged from all directions. If one looked carefully, one could see that their skin was moving. He didn't know how much time had passed. Finally, the little fox frowned. After coughing twice, he woke up from his meditation. He glanced at the boundless sea of clouds and said reluctantly, "So much energy. It's really an unimaginable great fortune. Unfortunately, this king has already made great progress and it's difficult for him to advance further. If he wanted to continue devouring, he would have to break through and ascend. However, how could it be so easy to break through and ascend?" As she spoke, she looked at Li Yueming, who was still unconscious not far away. She couldn't help but gasp, "If my perception is correct, until now, the amount of life essence you absorbed should be 10 times more than mine. I really can't imagine what kind of monster you are." After saying that, the little fox did not disturb Li Yueming's meditation and left the coffin in a flash. She had no choice. If she continued to stay here, she felt that she was about to explode from the huge force. He didn't know how Li Yueming did it. The amount of life essence he had absorbed was more than 10 times that of hers, yet he still acted as if nothing had happened. Although Li Yueming had not woken up from his cultivation state, his 5 senses were sharp enough to capture the movements of the outside world. After realizing that the little fox had left, not only did he not slow down the speed at which he absorbed the life essence, but he also accelerated the circulation of the Star Moon art, making the devouring efficiency even faster. "I don't know, it's not an illusion." In the process of absorbing these life essences, Li Yueming also keenly captured some cultivation techniques and cultivation experience fragments. If nothing went wrong, it should be the remnant of the power that was engraved in the depths of Siwu and the little fox's mother's power. This could be considered a pleasant surprise. Li Yueming successfully broke through to the late stage of Nirvana realm based on some of the experiences he had gained. What was worth mentioning was that Siwu's cultivation experience actually coincided with Li Yueming's in many places. For example, he pursued the ultimate individual power and did not rely too much on external forces. There was even the development of the human body's treasures, as well as the repeated hammering of various powers. All of this was in line with Li Yueming's thoughts. However, as a universe-level supreme warrior, Siwu's cultivation experience was clearly many times more complete than Li Yueming's. Even if it was just a few fragments, it was enough to give Li Yueming a lot of inspiration. Chapter 692, Overturn Everything and Change the Future from the Past. 2. Once, twice, thrice. In the process of constantly trying to break through, Li Yueming repaired the meridians of the spiritual energy circulation in his body again and again, but he still could not break through the door of the realm that was as stable as Mount Tai. This made Li Yueming even more confused. As a thief who had stolen countless fortunes of heaven and earth, Li Yueming was already enjoying the treatment of the chosen one of this world. Therefore, the barrier of the Ascension realm should no longer be a reason to stop him from continuing to break through. But now, with the support of endless life essence, why couldn't he break through the realm above nirvana? After failing again and again, Li Yueming was increasingly certain that there was definitely something wrong with the cultivation system left behind by the ancient Tiando clan's human emperor. It was just that with his current ability, he was still unable to fully detect the problem. But no matter what, Li Yueming didn't have the habit of leaving any hidden dangers. Especially in the current situation where the enemy was right in front of them, a little negligence and hidden dangers could lead to a disaster, not to mention such a fundamental thing. There was no room for sloppiness. Therefore, after discovering these problems in the process of breaking through to the realm above ascension, after a long period of deduction and pondering, he finally understood the situation. Li Yueming decided to go for broke and build up again. He would completely give up on the current cultivation results and open up a new cultivation path based on his own understanding of Dharma and Dao, as well as the experience gained from the remaining life essence fragments of So Wu and the little fox's mother. This was undoubtedly a huge project. It was undoubtedly a huge risk to put forward the agenda at this critical moment of time. Fortunately, ever since Li Yueming entered this world, he had been deducing and thinking about the feasibility of this path. Therefore, he already had some clues. The reason why he hadn't tried it yet was that the time wasn't ripe yet, and he lacked an environment like today where the energy was extremely abundant. What he wanted to do was to create a cultivation path that fused the treasures of the human body with the spiritual energy meridians. Perhaps this was the only way to break the shackles of the path of chi refinement in this world. After all, the treasure of the human body was the foundation of his existence. Thinking of this, Li Yueming finally stopped hesitating and started to take action. Time passed in the blink of an eye. More than 10 years had passed in the outside world. Li Yueming, who was in the coffin, had almost exploded twice and almost died 3 times. He had almost been played into a piece of trash by himself. Finally, he had completely broken away from the path of chi refinement left behind by the ancient human emperor Tiando clan and became a pure body cultivator. Of course, this didn't mean that Li Yueming's cultivation was in vain. The meridians in his body that had been widened by the spiritual energy were only connected to the human body's treasures. It did not mean that he could not mobilize the power of the spiritual energy between heaven and earth. It was just that the spiritual energy had been completely stripped out of Li Yueming's flesh and blood and was no longer a part of Li Yueming's body. Li Yueming could still draw spiritual energy into his body to exert terrifying power, but the spiritual energy did not come from the storage in his body, nor could it invade his body. It was purely borrowing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. As long as the heaven and earth spiritual energy was not exhausted, Li Yueming could still use the power that was incomparable to before. If the heaven and earth spiritual energy was dense enough, Li Yueming could use even more power. However, the operation of throwing away the spiritual energy and connecting the human meridians with the human body's treasure increased the power of the human body's treasure by several times. This was a huge difference in the increase in Li Yueming's combat strength. Of course, the chain effect brought about by breaking and then building was not just that. In the process of transforming his body's cultivation system, Li Yueming had faced near-death situations several times. Now that he had survived, Li Yueming realized that his understanding of the human body's treasures had become even deeper. The 7th human body treasure that was originally still blurry and unknown suddenly became clear. Therefore, Li Yueming put all his energy into developing the 7th human treasure. His intuition told him that this new human body treasure might bring him an even more terrifying improvement. Spring passed and autumn came, cold and heat alternated. Another 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the sea of life spiritual energy in the stone coffin had become much more sparse. One had to know that the little fox had only absorbed 1% of the life essence of the sea of clouds when she almost exploded. But now, in order to open up this new human body treasure, Li Yueming had absorbed most of the life essence in the stone coffin in one go. After many attempts, he finally obtained the long-awaited result 10 years later. Li Yueming called this new human body treasure trove the four-sided polar dragon's hidden treasure. It was a brand new human body treasure trove in Komitani. In fact, it was not quite accurate to say that it was a pure human treasure. Frio Bien. The four-sided polar dragon represented the four limbs of the human body, while the dragon represented the spine of the human body. These 5 parts were the foundation of the human body that could dominate the world. If the God-returning treasury was an A-cup ointment that gathered a person's heart, body, and spirit, then the God-returning treasury was a place where a person's heart, body, and spirit were gathered. It controlled the power of the human body, the source of power, and the words. Then, the four-sided polar dragon's hidden treasure represented the 5 parts of the human body. It symbolized the foundation of the human body's ability to be higher than the sky. Chapter 693, Overturn Everything and Change the Future from the Past. 3. The boost to combat strength was simply too terrifying. Li Yueming was very satisfied with this result. At the very least, he didn't waste so much life essence to nourish his body. In the remaining time, he continued to consolidate the 4 polarized dragons' hidden treasure. However, while Li Yueming was still immersed in it, a terrifying fluctuation suddenly came from the outside world. Li Yueming opened his eyes and appeared outside the stone coffin. He looked at the stone tablet that was originally carved with So Wu's picture and saw that for some reason, there were many cracks on it. As if it had felt Li Yueming's gaze, the stone tablet suddenly shook twice, emitting a faint golden light, outlining a dreamy transparent phantom. The mysterious man looked at the boundless darkness above his head and then at Li Yueming, who had a serious expression on his face. He slowly said, "The old man has already discovered this place. You don't have much time." Li Yueming didn't panic. After all, there was no use panicking at this point. Everything that could be prepared had already been done. Next, he could only do his best and leave it to fate. However, for some reason, Li Yueming felt that So Wu, who was not far away, was somewhat familiar. Seemingly sensing the doubt in his eyes, So Wu, whose figure was blurry, revealed a faint smile. "Master, to be able to see you here, that's great." When he heard the word master, Li Yueming was stunned. He suddenly shivered and said in disbelief, "You? Are you extraordinary?" When he said the word extraordinary, Li Yueming could feel his voice trembling. However, So Wu did not answer his question. Instead, he said slowly, "The ending of this life is too miserable. All my hopes can only be placed on you, Master. I hope that at the end of time, my unfilial disciple will be able to meet you again." As soon as he finished speaking, the faint radiance on So Wu's body finally shattered completely. It turned into a huge trident and rushed into the sky. "Old thing, so what if you left behind many backup plans? Let me blind one of your dog eyes first, and then Master will crush your plan." The trident gently slashed a hole in the sky of the god burial ground, and it disappeared from his perception almost instantly. In that instant, he could vaguely see a huge blood-red eye appear from the tear in space. Li Yueming stood on the ground in a daze, unable to come back to his senses for a long time. So Wu didn't admit that he was Han Bufan. However, Li Yueming was not stupid. Before he saw the shadow, he had not thought about this problem. Now, he already knew everything. Under normal circumstances, even if So Wu was a universe-level absolute warrior, he shouldn't be able to leave behind such a life essence pool that was so compatible with his body. For example, the little fox could only absorb the life essence left behind by the extreme frost snow fox, which was a direct relative. However, Li Yueming and So Wu were not related to each other. Under normal circumstances, the cultivation technique that the two of them used and their understanding of Dao and law would deviate. Even if Li Yueming could inherit and absorb a part of the power that did not conflict with each other, it was impossible for him to be like this. Basically, there was no conflict. Not to mention, when he absorbed the experience fragments, Siwu's cultivation philosophy was similar to Li Yueming's in many ways. Even if there were some subtle differences, they were only similar. At that time, Li Yueming thought that everything was just a coincidence. But now, he knew that all of this was not a coincidence at all. It was because this supreme martial artist who called himself Siwu was his disciple in the martial Dao world, Han Bufan. It was precisely because of this. Only then could he absorb the life essence in the stone coffin without any obstruction. The reason why Han Bufan changed his name and even corroded the portrait engraved on the stone tablet with black blood, leaving only a remnant soul to hide, was because he did not want Li Yueming to discover the truth in advance. After all, if Li Yueming knew that it was his disciple who had died, he would not be able to absorb the remaining life essence without any psychological burden. Was it because the outcome of walking normally was too miserable, so he thought of ways to use the treasure to travel back and forth in time, trying to change the future from the past? In other words, as long as he seized every opportunity to strengthen himself and rewrite the fate set in the reincarnation mark again and again, he would have a chance to reverse what had already happened in the future? Thinking of this, Li Yueming couldn't help but clench his fists. He didn't know how bleak the future would be, but as long as everything hadn't happened yet, there would still be a chance for change. At the very least, for the sake of Han Bufan, he had to pass this public reincarnation instance dungeon beautifully. The stone tablet shattered, and the remnant soul within turned into a trident and disappeared. The god burial ground lost its stable foundation in the small world and began to tremble violently. Chapter 694, Blood Rain, High in the Sky. 1. After the stone tablet shattered, the god burial ground became unstable. Li Yueming slowly came back to his senses. He looked at the darkness that could no longer be seen in the sky and did not speak for a long time. A moment later, he punched out and opened a path to the outside world. While he was tricking Little Fox and Suxian into leaving this unstable space, Li Yueming sorted out his thoughts based on the information he knew so far. After all, the information he had obtained earlier was too chaotic. If he did not sort it out clearly, he might still not be able to understand what was happening. Everything should have started from the war between the Alliance of Law and the Zergs. The Alliance of Order occupied the main universe and shared the vast sea of stars. For a long time, the factions of the Order races were numerous, and the internal conflicts were also very serious. As for the Zergs, they originated from the desolate planets at the edge of the universe. In order to survive on the barren planet, the Zerg had evolved into a terrifying civilization through continuous genetic improvement. It could devour all substances that could be devoured, even rocks could be digested into energy. After obtaining the energy, the mother bug would then produce a terrifying number of offspring to continue the optimization of the genes. This cycle repeated itself, and the number of Zergs grew rapidly like an explosion. Soon, they became one of the overlord races in the universe. When their numbers reached a certain level, the Zerg, which had been wandering at the edge of the universe, began to be dissatisfied with the current situation. They then began to devour the rich and vibrant territory in the center of the universe. In this process, they gradually became a cosmic disaster that terrified countless races. Wherever the army passed by, the energy of the entire universe would be swept away by it, turning into an even more terrifying and huge race. Almost no resources would be spared. Under such circumstances, the races of the universe could only unite. That was how the Alliance of Law and Order came into being. However, at this time, the Zerg race had already grown to an unstoppable level. Their natural catastrophe-like expansion efficiency and evolution speed were not something that a group of ordinary races in the main universe could resist. In the tug-of-war that lasted for several eras, the Alliance of Order was defeated step by step, and countless star areas fell into the hands of the Zerg. Li Yueming didn't know how he had grown up before the timeline changed. However, according to Han Bufen's description, he could roughly guess that he had transcended from his original world and wandered into other worlds, eventually growing to a level where he could take charge of his own affairs. During this process, he made many friends and witnessed many joys and sorrows. In the end, he represented the human race and became the supreme leader of the Alliance of Order. Even though he, the supreme leader, was ultimately unable to resolve the bug race's corruption of the universe, and even ended up dying in the war with the bug race. However, because he had used his terrifying personal strength to enter the Zerg nest and severely injured many of the Zerg's supreme champions, even causing the Zerg to be unable to recover for an entire era, he had always been regarded as the leader of the Alliance of Order who had the most hope of defeating the Zerg. The era he was in was also known as the last opportunity for the Alliance of Order to counterattack the Zerg. After this defeat, the Zerg finally entered a mature stage. The Alliance of Order had completely lost the power to stop the Zerg's attack. After discovering that he was powerless on the battlefield, Li Ziyu decided to look for the legendary universal space-time treasure, the Tesseract. Using the space-time power contained in the Tesseract to form a space-time anchor point, one could achieve the heaven-defying operation of changing the past in the future and then changing the future through the past. This plan was known as Plan A of Salvation. Of course, under normal circumstances, the best time to use the Tesseract to change the past should be to reduce the dimension of the Zergs before they became powerful. However, the rise of the Zergs was not something that happened overnight. The time needed to be traced back was too long, and there were too many uncontrollable factors. The most important thing was that the consumption of space-time power in the Tesseract was too terrifying. Therefore, he didn't think much of this. In reality, it was impossible to achieve. Only by interfering with Li Yueming's time node would this plan have a certain degree of feasibility. Han Bufen was Li Yueming's disciple before the world line changed. He was also the commander-in-chief of the Third Army of the Alliance of Law. Naturally, he knew the specific information of the Salvation Plan A. Similarly, he had died fighting for the Tesseract. And after he died, he saw a Li Yueming in the world where he should have died. What did this mean? Naturally, it meant that Plan A had succeeded. At the same time, the methods that he had long prepared could also be put to use. Combining all the information. The mark of reincarnation should be a space-time treasure made from the Tesseract, and its purpose was to nurture talents for future Zerg wars. Especially Li Yueming, who was the most important person in this plan. The reincarnation imprint was similar to the software of a good program. After installing it on Li Yueming's body, everything that was set up was expanded. Chapter 695, Blood Rain, High in the Sky. 2. The R letter was a guaranteed mechanism. Obtaining more than 3 SSS grades in the reincarnation world meant that Li Yueming's strength and experience in the various major reincarnation worlds were mature enough. The reincarnation mark would automatically send this letter and randomly bring Li Yueming to a world that contained the truth. As for whether they could touch the truth, and whether they were willing to touch the truth, the choice was up to Li Yueming. As for the so-called reincarnation point, it was a spell used by the Creator to guide and restrict the actions of Li Yueming and other reincarnators who were protected by the power of time and space. It prevented them from playing too much and causing them to lose control. After sorting out his thoughts, Li Yueming's gaze completely calmed down. No matter how complicated the truth contained in the reincarnation mark was, it did not make much of a difference to him. It was nothing more than surviving and becoming stronger. The only difference was that before he knew the truth, Li Yueming was simply living for himself. After finding out the truth, more and more people were supporting Li Yueming. This might not be a bad thing for him. After all, compared to living in a muddle-headed state and dying in a muddle-headed state in the end. After seeing the truth, it would feel better to have his fate and choice in his own hands. Shaking his head, he tossed the messy thoughts out of his mind. At this moment, Su Xian and the little fox had already left the god burial ground that was about to collapse. Li Yueming no longer needed to maintain the stability of the passage. He took a step forward and appeared outside the boiling volcano in an instant. Hwalala! Raindrops were actually falling outside the extremely hot endless volcano. Su Xian and Little Fox were both surprised. One had to know that this place was known as the hottest and driest place in the world. Under normal circumstances, as long as the boiling lava had not extinguished, the lava would be able to melt. There shouldn't have been any water falling from the endless volcano even if it had been thousands of years. But now, there was water that defied this logic. Suxuan stretched out her hand to catch a handful of scalding raindrops. She looked at them and realized that it was not rain. It was clearly scarlet and sticky blood. The two of them looked up at the same time and saw that the sky was as dark as ink, filled with a terrifying and oppressive aura. Su Xian, who had the weakest cultivation among the three of them, felt her entire body trembling. Even her soul had fallen into a deep fear. After a long while, she whispered, "This. What was going on? The Lord God and him are fighting." The little fox shook her head. Even though the three of them had personally witnessed Han Bufen's remnant soul transform into a trident and fly out into the sky. However, they could not see what was happening in the sky. The only thing he could be sure of was that the terrifying phenomenon in the outside world was definitely related to that person in the god burial ground. Li Yueming was calmer and said, "No matter what, let's go back to Northern Ice River Town first. The world is already chaotic enough, we can't let it continue." At this point, Li Yueming suddenly looked up at the dark sky and said coldly, "No matter what you are, as long as your main body doesn't come personally, I'll think of a way to kill you." Han Bufen used the last of his strength to charge into the sky and help him stall him. What Li Yueming had to do was to set up all the traps and gather all his strength to give him a fatal blow. At this moment, they were not the only ones who felt it. All the living beings in this world could feel the terrifying and oppressive aura in the sky. The weak ones didn't need to say much, they knelt on the ground, crying and trembling. The so-called strong were no exception. Under the terrifying might of him, they all trembled and did not dare to make any moves. The rain of blood fell for an entire day. In the beginning, the blood was still bright red. However, towards the end, the aura in the blood rain had become even more stinky and dirty. Such a strange phenomenon that had never been recorded in the history books had scared the guts of countless people. Countless people in the land of the 9 prefectures, including the commoners, were so scared that their faces were pale and bloodless. It was not easy for him to endure until the blood rain stopped. The entire world was silent, and only the beating of the heart and the heavy panting of the air meant that this life still existed. It was not until the next day that the crowd finally recovered from yesterday's strange phenomenon. The entire world was suddenly in an uproar, and all kinds of demonic whines rose in all directions. It was unknown how many voices were discussing what had happened. Could it be that the heavens have witnessed too many killings in this world, so they shed tears of blood to warn all living beings? It must be the souls of those who died unjustly in the war between the 6 states a few years ago who have come back to claim their lives. We are not looking for the culprits. If you vengeful souls want to find them, go find the culprit who started the war. To be honest, I thought the world was going to be destroyed yesterday. Such a terrifying aura makes people wonder if the so-called gods really exist in this world. I wonder if the various governments can give an explanation for this matter. This sudden blood rain was the most widespread and influential phenomenon in the history of 9 regions. Everyone in the world was discussing this. Chapter 696, Blood Rain, High in the Sky. 3. The Great Tang, Great Ming, and Great Qin finally came to a conclusion after deliberating word for word. This rain of blood was a warning from the heavens to the human world. The Star Moon Empire had caused too many killings, and it was almost to the extent of angering the heavens and resenting the people. In order to not anger the Star Moon Empire and at the same time put pressure on the Star Moon Empire, it was hard on them. The conclusion he came up with had to be carefully considered word by word. He was deeply afraid that he would accidentally anger the Star Moon Empire and cause a fatal disaster. If it wasn't for the fact that their ancestor had been killed, why would they need to be so careful? FENVO. In addition, Li Yueming had not appeared in the Star Moon dynasty for many years. Normally, it would not attract too much attention. After all, Li Yueming had a record of disappearing from the world last time. Most of the people who thought he was dead had now become dead. The other three countries naturally did not dare to have any disloyalty. However, this sudden rain of blood was strange in every way. Although there was no clear record of this in the documents of the other three countries, they knew more than others because they had the ancestor. Now that he had released the news, he wanted to test the reaction of the Star Moon Empire. Just as they announced their conclusion to the public, wanting to not anger the Star Moon Empire anymore, but putting pressure on the Star Moon Empire, Li Yueming brought Little Fox and Suxian back to northern Ice River Town. A rain of blood suddenly fell from the sky. Originally, the entire Star Moon dynasty was actually a little flustered. They couldn't be blamed for this. After all, who wouldn't be scared out of their wits when they saw such a scene? However, after the expressionless Li Yueming appeared in North Ice River Town, the entire Star Moon dynasty settled down again. Li Yueming was the pillar of the Star Moon dynasty. As long as he was here, not to mention a bloody rain, even if a knife fell from the sky, so what? The members of the Star Moon troop were not necessarily afraid. After returning to North Glacier Town, Li Yueming didn't explain about sanguine rain. He just found Ding Yi, Huang Li Er, and the others and said, "I've found a place for you to retire and cultivate in the mountains. Get ready, resign and leave." Ding Yi and Huang Li Er were the elders who followed him. When the Star Moon troop had just been formed, they had already followed behind him. As for Huang Li Er and Tian Liang, they had already known each other when they were in the school founded by Wang Ziwei. During the long years of interaction, they could already be considered old friends among old friends. However, even so, when they heard Li Yueming asking them to resign and leave the Star Moon army, Huang Li Er, Ding Yi, and the others were still shocked. It was not that they were greedy for power in the Star Moon army. In fact, to them, the power of the Star Moon troop could only be considered as a reflection of the moon in the water. After waking up from a dream, Yu Huan was deeply attached to them. It was because they were shocked by Li Yueming's attitude. After all, they had faced so many ups and downs together, and in the process, they had tied their heads to their belts countless times. However, Li Yueming had never said anything to them at that time. However, at this moment, Li Yueming took the initiative to come to them and asked them to resign from their positions and go to the 100,000 mountains to recuperate. To them, this was simply unbelievable. Li Yueming didn't explain anything to them. It seemed that he only read the order one-sidedly. He didn't pay attention to Huang Li Er and the others who were shocked. He turned around and left alone. Previously, he could use Huang Li Er and the others without any scruples because Li Yueming knew that they would not really die. But now, the battle between him and He was completely different. The reincarnators lost the ability to leave the reincarnation world. If he was killed by him, he would really be in danger of dying. Chapter 697, You're Not Alone. This order was just a sentence to Li Ming, but it had a huge impact on the Star Moon Empire. After the news of Ding Yi, Huang Li Er, and the others being dismissed spread, even the entire Star Moon dynasty welcomed a huge reshuffle. The elders abdicated one after another, and new blood began to rise to the stage. Li Yueming carried a resolute and cold attitude as he began to mobilize his army to march into the territory of the remaining three countries. It was obvious that he was prepared to use a tough and iron-blooded war method to sweep away everything. The chaos caused by the blood rain that suddenly fell from the sky some time ago had not ended yet. The Great Tang, Great Ming, and Great Qin explained that this blood rain was because the Star Moon dynasty had been too brutal in recent years, causing the heavens to be angry. This was why the blood rain was sent to warn everyone. Originally, they had only wanted to make the Star dynasty wary of them, so that they would not dare to raise their knives against them. After all, for the various countries, even if they could survive for one more day, it would be good. However, he did not expect that this move would be like shooting himself in the foot. Li Yueming did not care about the opinions of the outside world at all. He still did his own thing and mobilized the army to attack them. After sensing the intentions of the Star Moon Empire, the entire world was in an uproar, especially the nobles of the old forces who had been swept away by the Star Moon army. At this moment, they were all gnashing their teeth, wishing they could drink their blood and eat their flesh. This Li Yueming is really crazy. Even the heavens have sent down a rain of blood as a warning, yet he still dares to go against the heavens. Is he really not afraid of retribution? The world is so vast, and there are many capable Qi practitioners. Why is there no one who can teach Li Yueming a lesson? They actually put those commoners in an important position and expelled us, the nobles with prominent statuses. The Star Moon Empire is seeking death. I've already opened my eyes wide. Even if I have to die, I want to witness the fall of Li Yueming and the Star Moon Empire with my own eyes. When the Great Qi, Great Song, and Great Zhou were destroyed, the Star Moon army captured many of the old nobles who had committed crimes and vowed to resist. However, in such a short period of time, it was impossible for the factions of the old nobles to be completely wiped out. Many noble families from various countries fled to Great Qin and other countries to seek refuge. Now, the Star Moon army actually had the intention to attack them again. This group of people was the most anxious. Almost all of them were cursing. If their resentment was useful, Li Yueming and the Star Moon Empire would have already gone to hell under their daily blessings. Of course, there were also many people who felt that this move was the right one. Instead of leaving the Tang, Qin, and Ming kingdoms to continue to cause trouble on this mainland, it was better to take advantage of the Star Moon dynasty and Li Yueming's peak to sweep away all obstacles. After all, even if it was the same thing, it would lead to different results at different time nodes. The Star Moon troops had the ability to easily destroy the three kingdoms, but it did not mean that they would have the ability in the future. Of course, no matter how the outside world commented, Li Yueming turned a deaf ear to it. He wasn't even afraid of the real him. How could he be influenced by a bunch of stray dogs who had already lost in a fight? Therefore, after more than half a month of preparation, the Star Moon army set off without hesitation under Li Yueming's mobilization. In the 24th year of the Northern Ice River calendar, the main force of the Star and Moon army attacked the Ming Empire all the way to the south. In the third month of the following year, they invaded the capital of the Ming Empire. The Ming Emperor took the initiative to surrender, and the Star and Moon army took away all the power in the hands of the Emperor. However, they did not completely exterminate him. Compared to the emperors of Qi, Song, and Zhou, the Ming Emperor was still able to keep his life. Northern Ice River Calendar, Year 28. The Star Moon army basically annexed the Ming dynasty. Under normal circumstances, to annex a country that had ruled the world since ancient times and had a vast territory would require a huge amount of manpower, material resources, and financial resources. Moreover, it would take tens of years to disintegrate its influence. However, the Star Moon troop had clearly simplified this process. After all, there was no longer a third time. The long period of terrifying expansion had allowed the Star Moon dynasty to form a very efficient political operation system. Coupled with the experience of annexing countries in the world, the Star Moon dynasty was the only one that was outstanding. Although the old nobles and resistance forces would still exist for a long time in the future. However, under the initial governance, Great Ming was already considered to have submitted to the territory of the Star Moon Empire. At this point, the land area of the Star Moon dynasty skyrocketed again. After the Great Tang and Great Qin saw that the other four countries had been annihilated, they finally felt the threat of destruction. They gave up on the idea of struggling at death's door and began to gather their armies for a final counterattack. Li Yueming naturally wouldn't indulge them. The Star Moon army had long since established their belief in invincibility through victory after victory. Even in the history books, the Star Moon Army could be called the most powerful army collection in 9 regions since the concept of army soul. Before the Star Moon Army, there had never been an army that could reach nearly 10 million. In front of such a fighting spirit and firm conviction, the strongest army in history. Chapter 698, You're Not Alone, 2. When the war started, it was basically one-sided. The armies of Qin and Tang were completely defenseless. In the 30th year of the Northern Ice River calendar, the Star Moon Army defeated the main Tang army on the battlefield and captured more than 300,000 surrendered soldiers. At the end of the same year, they invaded the capital of the Tang Empire. The Great Qin Empire, which was left alone, saw that it was powerless and surrendered in the spring of the following year. The Star Moon Army did not find it difficult to become Great Qin's ruler. According to some unreliable rumors, Great Qin's current ruler, the 9th prince, might have had some unknown relationship with Li Yueming. Such a turbulent war had begun in a way that no one had expected, and it had also ended in a way that no one had expected. It had come quickly and ended even faster. When they heard that the war had ended, many people could not believe it. How glorious were the 6 nations in the past! Standing at the peak of the world today, each country had a long heritage and extremely noble bloodline. In the end, he did not expect it to end in such a miserable evening. Countless people were at a loss for words. On the day that the army entered the capital of Qin, the entire Star Moon dynasty was in an uproar. A grand celebration was held the following month. Almost everyone in the Star Moon dynasty was immersed in the revelry of unifying the 6 countries and sweeping the world. Without a doubt, this was an achievement that would be recorded in history. Even if tens of thousands of years had passed. As long as the civilization was not destroyed, as long as the legacy was not cut off. Many of their names would be imprinted in the annals of history, shining brightly even after thousands of years. However, there weren't many core higher UPS attending this celebration. As the Supreme Commander, Li Yueming didn't come, nor did the Deputy Commander, Li Yuexing. The highest-ranking person who came was the current city lord of Hejing, Li Ruyu. However, this did not affect the joy of the Star Moon troop. After all, Li Yueming and Li Yuexing rarely showed up in the Star Moon army. Li Ruyu was the only one who was often active in the front line. In the endless mountains thousands of miles north of North Ice River Town, the old capital of Star Moon Dynasty. Looking at Huang Li and the others with complicated expressions, Li Yueming's face was cold as he said, "Let's go. Cultivate well in the coming years." The people standing in front of Li Yueming were all veterans of the Star Moon Army. It included almost all the reincarnators who had followed Li Yueming back then. Ding Yi, Huang Li, Tian Liang, Qi Fan. After Han Bufan's remnant soul left the stone tablet, the real god burial ground had already collapsed because it had lost its core support. However, the outer space of the god burial ground was not affected. Not only did it not collapse, but it also benefited a lot. Before the core of the god burial ground collapsed, Li Yueming took out all the remaining life essence that had not been completely absorbed from the stone coffin and placed it into the earth vein divine spring in the outer space. Although he had already absorbed most of the life essence in the stone coffin, he was still a little worried. However, there was still quite a bit left. This portion of life essence was dispensable to him now, but after being poured into the earth vein divine spring, it still increased the grade of the earth vein divine spring by more than 1 level. It was simply the most suitable time for a group of reincarnators to come here to cultivate. Under Li Yueming's lead, the group of people went around in circles and arrived at the outer area of the god burial ground, which had already changed its landscape. Due to the loss of the power of the core space, the periphery of the god burial ground had completely turned from a mysterious place into an ordinary volcano. Although the temperature was still very high, it no longer had that oppressive feeling. It could no longer affect the key refiner. However, when they saw the spring water that was filled with terrifying energy in volcano, the group of reincarnators could not help but gasp. Even if they were not close, They could also sense that this divine spring was extraordinary. No wonder Li Yueming personally brought them here to cultivate. It was so terrifying. The group of reincarnators finally came back to their senses. They looked at each other, but they could only look at each other. A long time ago, they were still chasing after Li Yueming. At that time, they were still young. They thought that as long as they worked hard, with their identity as reincarnators, they would be able to catch up to Li Yueming one day and easily leave him behind. But later, they realized that they were wrong. Li Yueming was simply ridiculous. One couldn't even use the word chosen one to describe how overboard he was. It could only be said that this guy was definitely the biological son of the world's will. Everything he had done over the years was like a cheat. And now, the strongest among them had just broken through the divine aperture and advanced to the heavenly tribulation. Li Yueming was so terrifying that they could not even see his shadow. He was simply a man who made people fear him. Are you sure? We don't have to worry about the outside world anymore. As one of the higher UPS who had the best relationship with Li Yueming, Huang Li stood up and asked Li Yueming. Li Yueming nodded. I only discovered this pool recently. If we leave it alone, the pure energy in the pool may slowly dissipate. Therefore, after thinking about it, I decided to let all of you retreat and focus on cultivating here for a period of time. Hearing this, the group of reincarnators nodded. After all, although they did not have much attachment to power, and their mission completion rate was high enough, they did not have to stay in their posts to continue to shine. However, they were suddenly transferred out of nowhere. It would be a lie to say that they did not have any thoughts. However, due to Li Yueming's personal strength and the mutual trust that they had built up all this time, the two of them were still in the same boat. It was just that no reincarnators expressed it. If the retirement cultivation area that Li Yueming mentioned was such a magical place, the group of reincarnators felt that retirement seemed to be completely acceptable. After all, they had already completed the most difficult and rewarding quest of the public reincarnation dungeon, the Become a King quest. If nothing unexpected happened, compared to the reincarnation points they obtained from completing the highest difficulty mission, the reincarnation points obtained by other reincarnators were definitely much worse. Therefore, they no longer had to worry about most of the things in the outside world. There was only one thing that made them uneasy: something seemed to have gone wrong in this world. Not only did it cause the world level to soar to level 9, which many of them had never experienced before. It even cut off their passage to leave this world on their own. This was undoubtedly very bad. It was unknown how many reincarnators had given up on the mission in order to save their lives and turned to hide in the mountains. Moreover, because of their limited strength, most reincarnators really could not find out the truth like Li Yueming. In conclusion, Li Yueming had asked them to retire from the Star Moon Army in advance to cultivate. It might be a good thing for them. At the very least, they didn't have to worry so much about the possible unexpected events that might happen in the future. After arranging the reincarnators, Li Yueming left the 100,000 mountains. Li Ruxing followed behind him without saying a word. Her expression was relatively calm and peaceful. Seeing that the cold North Ice River was still rolling past, she looked at Li Yueming and said, "Little brother, you seem to be very impatient recently. Are you going to face the real mastermind?" Li Yueming heaved a sigh of relief and calmed down. He looked up at the sky and replied, "Yes, it should have already begun when the blood rain fell. However, someone chose to sacrifice himself and bought me some time. Are you ready?" "Perhaps, roughly. I don't know either." "No matter what, you don't have to be so worried. There's always a way out, right? Besides, you have to believe that there are thousands of people in this world other than you and us." Chapter 699, 9 Cauldrons as One, Ascending. 1. Northern Ice River Calendar, Year 32. The Star Moon Dynasty had basically wiped out the main resistance forces in various places, and the world welcomed a rare peace. He had single-handedly wiped out the 6 countries and finally established a unified and huge country. Such an achievement was clearly recorded in the ancient history of the entire land of the 9 regions. Only the human emperor, the Tian-do clan, had ever accomplished it. No one else could compare to it. This matter had shocked everyone in the world. Northern Glacier Town had taught them what it meant to be unstoppable, and Li Yueming had taught them what it meant to be gifted. After unifying the world, the Star Moon Army began to transport the 9 cauldrons back to Northern Ice River Town from the conquered 6 nations. According to ancient legends, as long as one could cross the threshold of the peak of Nirvana and gather the 9 cauldrons to gather the fate of the human race, the Chi refiner could ascend to the heaven realm like the human emperor in ancient times. After the Tian-do dynasty disintegrated, the 9 cauldrons, which symbolized the ultimate power of the world, were divided up by the 9 sub-dynasties. Originally, each sub-dynasty had been given a cauldron, which was relatively considered a breakthrough. However, in the long years that followed, Great Gan, Great Han, and Great Xia had already been conquered and disappeared into the river of history. The 3 cauldrons they possessed were naturally divided among the remaining 6 sub-dynasties. Among them, the Great Zhou, Great Ming, and Great Qin were the victors of that war, and each of them received a cauldron. And now, it had been more than 5,000 years since the last time the 9 cauldrons were divided. This land, which had been silent for countless years, finally had a huge force that could destroy the 6 countries and bring out the complete 9 cauldrons from the 6 countries. The world was shaken by this. Li Yueming has already broken through the Nirvana realm, right? He was probably only 1 step away from ascending. Now that he had obtained the 9 cauldrons, didn't this mean that as long as he collected enough power of providence, Li Yueming could possibly become the second ascender after the human emperor Tian-do clan? Hiss, if you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about this. According to the ancient legends, we might really be able to witness this historic scene. Li Yueming will become the second ascender after the human emperor of the Tian-do clan? No, no, no. No, no, no. It was impossible. I can't accept this. That's right. How can a damn clown like him be compared to the human emperor of the Tian-do clan? Countless people felt their emotions fluctuate violently after hearing this news. Especially the remaining factions of the 6 countries that had been wiped out. They almost hated him to the point that their teeth turned sour. One had to know that these were 9 cauldrons. It was originally a national treasure used to suppress the fate of the 9 provinces. The true trump card of the 6 nations. But now, he had become a stepping stone on Li Yueming's path to immortality. How could they accept this? Regardless of whether they were happy, sad, or angry. In this world, there was no room for losers to point fingers. They could only watch as the 9 cauldrons were transported from all over the world to Northern Glacier Town, getting closer and closer to Li Yueming. At the end of August of the same year, it was another autumn season. The 9 exquisitely shaped bronze cauldrons with lifelike carvings were eventually transported to Northern Ice River Town. This news shook the entire Northern Glacier Town. After all, the legend of the 9 cauldrons was too widespread, and the things they carried were too huge and heavy. The oldest history could even be traced back to the ancient Great Qian dynasty, which was long untraceable. Not to mention the 9 cauldrons, they were all in one place. Even if one of them was taken out, it would definitely be at the level of a national treasure, and it would cause a country or even several countries to fight over it. And now, 9 of these legendary cauldrons had appeared in Northern Ice River Town at the same time. It would be strange if it didn't cause a commotion. Even Li Yueming sent out his divine sense to take a look from afar after hearing the news. However, for some reason, the legendary 9 cauldrons were more ordinary than Li Yueming thought. Although he could vaguely feel that it had indeed withstood an incomparably huge amount of power of providence, it had long since been completely exhausted for some reason. Other than the traces of aura that showed that it was extraordinary. From the outside, it looked no different from an ordinary bronze cauldron. The people of Northern Ice River Town who were watching from nearby were initially excited and had specially applied for leave to come here to admire. They originally thought that the legendary 9 cauldrons would be extremely divine and that their bodies would emit 9 colored halos like those of the immortal world. However, the reality was cruel. After squeezing for a long time, they only saw a few grey broken cauldrons. Other than the simple and heavy shape, the unusually exquisite patterns, and the layer of bronze rust on the surface that looked very old, they were not much different from ordinary large cauldrons. The group of people were extremely disappointed. Of course, the people could not sense anything special about the 9 cauldrons. However, it did not affect its incomparably heavy value at all. After the 9 cauldrons were transported to Northern Ice River Town, the outside world became even more boisterous. This was especially true for the 6 nations. However, this did not stop them from sneakily hiding and mocking him. Smuggling Li Yueming was the most important thing in this business. After all, as the ultimate culprit who destroyed the 6 nations, Li Yueming was an irreconcilable enemy of the old and young. Chapter 700, 9 Cauldrons as One, Ascending. 2. When he founded Northern Ice River Town, he made it sound so good. He preaches nonsense ideals all day long, but in the end, he still wants others to work hard to achieve his own ideals. I don't know how Li Yueming managed to bewitch the people, but he managed to make so many Star Moon troops willingly work for him. But now that the 6 nations have been defeated, Li Yueming no longer needs to maintain his disgusting hypocritical face. The so-called ideal is just a piece of cloth in front of your eyes. Now that the cloth has been removed, open your eyes and take a good look. The General Li that you are loyal to has long changed. If I'm not wrong, he expelled the core elders of the Star Moon army some time ago in preparation to monopolize the fate of the world, right? Gathering the providence of the 9 provinces just for one person to ascend, such actions were truly nauseating. It's just that the pitiful people of the world didn't do anything, but their luck was snatched away by him. Under the propaganda of the remaining factions of the 6 nations, Li Yueming and the Star Moon dynasty were instantly pushed to the forefront. After all, whether it was the Star Moon Empire or Li Yueming himself, they were the focus of the world at this moment. Under such circumstances, even the slightest movement of grass could cause a huge commotion under the watchful eyes of countless people, not to mention monopolizing the 9 cauldrons, a super big event that could be engraved in history. The people of the world had a good impression of Li Yueming. However, it could not stop people from spreading the news that ascension would plunder the fate of the people of the world. This had violated the interests of countless people across the 9 provinces, and the denouncement of public opinion gradually occupied the mainstream. Because of the distribution of the 9 cauldrons, the outside world was in chaos. In the end, even Li Yueming could not bear the pressure and specially came to the depths of the small courtyard to ask Li Yueming how to deal with the 9 cauldrons. According to the normal process of the legend, Li Yueming only needed to combine the 9 cauldrons into one, and the 9 cauldrons would automatically absorb the fate of the world. It would give the holder of the 9 cauldrons an unparalleled amount of fate, helping him to break through the restrictions set by this world and fly out of the heaven realm, completely breaking away from the scope of the mortal world. But now, before they could do anything, the public opinion in the world had already become more and more turbulent. Li Yueming himself had been criticized by thousands of people. If he really dared to use the 9 cauldrons to ascend, he would probably be cursed for breaking his word in history. After all, the foundation of the Star Moon dynasty was Li Yueming's promise to the people of the world. It was because of this that the Star Moon dynasty could settle down so quickly without being feared and resisted by the people. To put it bluntly, the reason why the Star Moon troop was able to succeed was because of the ideal that was the cornerstone. As a result, even the soul of the Star Moon troop was engraved with the burning fire of ideals. This promise was the biggest difference between the Star Moon army and other armies, and it was also a shackle that Li Yueming had personally buried. If Li Yueming, as the general of the Star Moon army and the actual ruler and founder of the Star Moon dynasty, were to take the lead and break this promise, Even if it hadn't happened yet, one could already see what kind of terrifying earthquake it would cause. However, even so, Li Yueming did not respond much. He just nodded lightly at Li Ruyu, indicating that he already knew. Even Li Ruyu couldn't figure out his attitude. However, because Li Yueming had become more and more elusive over the years, even Li Ruyu had a strange fear of him. Seeing that her brother didn't seem to have any intention of responding directly, Li Ruyu could only choose to turn around and leave. Before she left, Li Ruyu stopped at the door. He turned around and looked at Li Yueming with a serious expression. "You're still my little brother, aren't you?" Upon hearing this, Li Yueming opened his eyes and looked at Li Ruyu, who was not far away. Her dark eyes flashed with a complicated light. After a long while, he sighed and said, "Just pretend that your brother died a long time ago." Li Ruyu nodded without saying anything. However, when he left, his back seemed a little bleak. As he watched her leave, Li Yueming's eyes revealed a rare look of pity. However, in the end, he did not say anything and let her leave alone. After his back completely disappeared from sight, Li Yueming looked at Li Ruxing, who was not far behind him, and said, "Isn't this too cruel for big sister?" Li Ruxing couldn't bear it, but in the end, she said resolutely, "If we fail, the world will definitely undergo a major reshuffle. No one knows what the outcome will be. It will definitely be beneficial to cut ties with our families as soon as possible." Li Yueming nodded. "Instead of sitting here, it's better to take the initiative to attack." After a long silence, Li Yueming stood up and said, "The 9 cauldrons can be combined to see the ascension. Let me see just how terrifying the 9 cauldrons of the 9 cauldrons are." Li Ruxing nodded, obviously agreeing with his approach.